Chapter 248. 7-Mile Cave Meow Altar. Last night's battle did not seem to affect the quiet atmosphere here. Under the young shaman's lead, Ghostly and Xiao Bai quietly walked in the altar. Xiao Hui, who was crouching on Ghostly's shoulder, seemed to have quietened down, as if the solemn atmosphere had also made it well behaved. Passing through the long tunnel, they came to the stone house deep inside the altar. The young shaman nodded slightly, did not speak to them, turned and left, the next moment disappeared into the darkness. Only the two of them were left. Ghostly and Xiao Bai looked at each other. Ghostly indifferently said, "Let's go in." Xiao Bai nodded in agreement. Both of them walked in together. The house was still very dim. A fire was still burning deep ahead. In front of the fire, a stooped figure was still sitting with his back facing them. In this familiar scene, in a trance, what happened last night seemed unreal. Perhaps it was just a dream. A light cough sounded from the old man's body. Under the illumination of the firelight, his back trembled violently, breaking the silence here and bringing everyone back to reality. "You all are here," the great shaman, after he stopped coughing, using a hoarse voice, slowly said. "Come over." Ghostly and Xiao Bai walked behind him, quietly sat down, in front of this frail old man. For some reason, both of them did not know what to say. The great shaman seemed to sigh softly, said, "Just now my tribesmen were rude to you all, don't take it to heart." Ghostly nodded slightly, said, "We dare not." The great shaman coughed twice again, became silent and did not say anything more. Ghostly and Xiao Bai could only wait patiently. Unexpectedly this wait was half a day. That great shaman seemed to be asleep, motionless, and did not react at all. Ghostly was getting more and more anxious. Firstly, he did not know what this great shaman was thinking. Secondly, the sudden turmoil last night made him feel bitter regret for the rest of his life. If by any chance he delayed Baiyao because of him, even 100 deaths would not be enough to atone for it. Right now, after waiting for a long time, the great shaman still did not seem to speak. Xiao Bai was still patient and not at all anxious, but Xiao Hui was already impatient. The monkey was playful by nature. Right now it could not stand the solemn atmosphere. It grabbed here and there, slid here and there, quietly slid down from Ghostly's body. Ghostly's heart was burning with anxiety. He really did not wish to delay any longer, immediately spoke, "Senior, the matter that I request from you." Before he could finish the word matter, the great shaman suddenly interrupted, "Young man, let me tell you a story." Ghostly was startled. He glanced at Xiao Bai beside him, only to see her also frowning a little, her eyes filled with confusion. Evidently she did not know what this old fellow was thinking. But right now he was after all asking for help. Ghostly could only sigh in his heart, endured the impatient anxiety in his heart, said patiently, "Senior, please speak." The great shaman's hoarse voice, in the depths of this dark altar, faintly resounded, as if after hundreds and thousands of years, at this moment again quietly turning back. "Our southern border is located in the south of the vast divine continent, has never been as prosperous as the central plains, but we have our own unique origins." Ghostly nodded silently. Southern border's unique customs were indeed different from central plains. Now everyone in the world knows, in our southern border, there are a total of 5 tribes living side by side, living together on this piece of land. But in actual fact, a long time ago, Miao, Li, Zhuang, Tu, Gao Mountain 5 tribes were actually the same ancient tribe, called Shaman tribe. Ghostly and Xiao Bai were stunned. Not to mention Ghostly had never heard of these things before. Even Xiao Bai did not have any impression. The great shaman's back figure was refracted into a slightly distorted shadow by the blazing flames, reflected on the ground, in his voice, at the same time, the crackling sounds of firewood bursting in the flames, indistinctly, carrying the vicissitudes of the past. The tribe legend, in the ancient times, the ancient shaman tribe managed the southern border, powerful and powerful. Every generation of the tribe produced people with profound shaman power, among them, the shaman lady who served the shaman deity in every generation. Her shaman skills were the most powerful. The so-called shaman lady was a virgin girl with the highest spiritual power selected from every generation of the ancient shaman tribe, to serve the shaman deity in the altar, delve into shaman skills and lead the entire shaman tribe. This kind of days went on for many years, many years. Ghostly and Xiao Bai both raised their heads slightly. They were both intelligent people. Right now they knew the crux of what the great shaman said was about to come out. And Xiao Hui at this moment had already stealthily snuck off somewhere in the darkness. But, on the 3rd year of the ancient shaman tribe's 11th generation shaman lady succeeding the throne, in the 10,000 great mountains of the southern border, suddenly a change happened. The great shaman's voice was still hoarse, but his tone quietly rose, as if the indistinct agitation in his heart was slowly leaking out. In the 10,000 great mountains, a monster known as the beast deity. No one knew where that monster came from. It seemed like he just appeared out of thin air in the dangerous and ferocious 10,000 great mountains. In the beginning, no one noticed the existence of that monster, but gradually, the ancestors of the shaman tribe felt the change. Although the undulating mountains of the 10,000 great mountains were treacherous, but the forests were lush, the animals numerous, the skilled hunters of the shaman tribe could always enter and hunt. But from that time onwards, in the 10,000 great mountains, a vicious miasma was suddenly born. When one inhaled a breath, the entire body would fester and die. What was even more strange was, the originally normal wild beasts also started to undergo strange changes. Some turned into beast-headed humanoid monsters, extremely savage, killed on sight, dismembered the corpses and ate them. It made one's hair stand on end. In the shaman tribe, for a moment, everyone was in a state of panic. Ghostly and Xiao Bai could not help but look at each other again. What the great shaman said was indeed strange, unheard of. The great shaman paused for a while, as if immersed in that ancient history. After a while, slowly continued. At that time, the shaman lady gathered the shaman leaders of the tribe for a discussion and finally sent 3 shamans to lead a team of elite warriors to the 10,000 great mountains to investigate, to see what exactly happened, to make the poisonous miasma suddenly appear in the mountains, the animals mutate. But on the 10th day after the team entered the mountains, only the leader with the strongest shaman power managed to escape, and his entire body festered. Even under the shaman lady's full treatment, it was still ineffective. In the end he only said the words beast deity on his deathbed, and died like that. Beast deity. Ghostly and Xiao Bai both slowly recited this name in their hearts. From that time onwards, the shaman tribe ancestors finally knew. A monster appeared in the 10,000 great mountains. Later on, after many investigations and sacrificing the lives of many brave warriors, they gradually found out that this monster had suddenly appeared in the 100,000 mountains. He had an unimaginably strange ability. Under his demonic magic, the originally lush mountains became barren, the clear rivers were filled with venom, and the poisonous miasma was everywhere. And the original various animals in the forest were also turned into monsters by his evil powers, turned into different kinds of bear people, tiger people, leopard people, werewolves, etc. monsters, savage man-eating, extremely terrifying. Ghost Li's lips suddenly twitched, interrupted. Among them is there a kind of fishman? The great shaman's figure shook, was silent for a moment, as if recalling something, and then slowly nodded, said, "That's right, according to the tribe's legend, those savage barbarians in the 10,000 great mountains, there is indeed such a kind of fishman." "Why, don't tell me you." Ghostly was silent for a moment, finally still said, "That's right, I once saw such a fishman monster in the western Great Marsh." The great shaman's body shook greatly, finally could not bear it, abruptly turned his head. The fire shone on his wrinkles, like deep-growth rings carved by the years, and his voice, right now, was already hoarse. You actually really saw those monsters?" Ghostly was silent but certain, nodded his head. The great shaman's face turned pale, stammered, finally appeared. Heaven's will. Heaven's will. But why would they appear in the west? The entrance to the 10,000 great mountains. isn't it guarded by the cultivating Funxiang Valley? His old face, at times terrified, at times confused, his expression changed incessantly, he seemed to be in a trance. Ghostly stretched out his hand, gently patted the old man's shoulder. The great shaman's body shook, as if suddenly awakened, looked at Ghostly. His expression gradually calmed down and then again turned his head, facing the fire. I better continue. Anyway, if it is heaven's will, we mortals are also powerless. His voice seemed to have an additional desolation. After knowing about the evil beast, the shaman tribe never had a day of peace again, and as time went on, the various monsters under the evil beast started to gradually come out of the 10,000 great mountains. Just like that, news of their tribesmen being killed came from everywhere, and the number increased. It really reached a state of panic, until the end. The ordinary shaman tribe people even started to abandon their homes, recklessly migrated to the north. It looked like if this continued, the entire shaman tribe would be destroyed. That generation of shaman lady originally wanted to find out more about this monster and then discuss how to get rid of this monster. Chapter 249. But at that time the shaman tribe was furious. The situation was really at its most critical moment. She finally decided to gather all of the shaman tribe shamans and warriors together to fight against this unparalleled evil, to fight it to the death, to save the shaman tribe. Unexpectedly, on that night when the shaman lady made this decision, the evil beast actually led his numerous evil demons, suddenly attacked from the 10,000 great mountains, directly towards the ancient shaman tribe altar. The shaman tribe altar is the place where the shaman tribe worshipped the shaman deity, has always been the lifeline of the tribe, sacred and inviolable. That night, it can be said that all of the shaman tribe, regardless male or female, even the slightly older children, all charged into the battlefield, fought with those ferocious evil demons to the death. The great shaman's voice, at this point, gently stopped and Ghostly and Xiao Bai held their breaths. That ancient bloody massacre seemed to be in the surrounding darkness, in the great shaman's bleak words, once again, quietly surfaced. That fierce battle is not something we can imagine. What our Miao tribe ancestors have passed down from generation to generation is only the scales and claws that describe that battle. Anyway, after blood stained the entire ground beneath their feet, after countless of shaman tribe warriors sacrificed their bodies to perish together with the evil demons, the evil beast finally still led some evil demons, charged into the shaman goddess's last defense, the shaman altar. And outside the altar, the massacre was still going on. Just that, the great shaman finally started to protect his people, and that shaman lady was publicly acknowledged as the most powerful shaman in history. After that earth-shattering battle, the evil beast and his few valiant evil demons were finally trapped by the shaman lady in the altar using the 8 savage inferno formation passed down by the ancient shaman god. What? Ghostly and Xiao Bai suddenly exclaimed at the same time. The great shaman looked back at them strangely, said, 8 savage inferno formation, what is it? Ghostly and Xiao Bai looked at each other, after a moment of silence, said, this name is rather strange. The great shaman sighed and said, this formation is passed down by the ancient shaman deity, using the rare treasure Inferno Mirror to activate. Its power is extremely strong. Even the demon beasts with exceedingly high evil powers were also trapped in this formation. The morale of the people of the shaman tribe was greatly boosted, while the morale of the demons was in chaos. Finally, they were gradually beaten back. Just that although the 8 savage inferno formation had boundless mana, but the demonic powers of the beast demon were really not to be underestimated. Under the burning of the 8 savage inferno dragon day and night, although seriously injured but still survived, and continued to confront the shaman goddess. At that time in the entire altar, because the formation's power was too strong, the other shamans could not go near to help. Only the shaman lady herself supported this huge formation with her own shaman power, and just like that after 3 days and 3 nights, when the entire shaman tribe was almost going crazy, that beast actually broke out of the formation. But although the beast escaped, but it was already dying from the burning of the formation, did not dare to stay any longer, directly flew back to its nest in the 10,000 great mountains. And when the crowd rushed to the altar, the shaman lady was already exhausted, so tired that she was like a dried-up lamp. Just that shaman lady was really an admirable figure. Just a day's rest, her vitality was greatly injured, and she decided to enter the 10,000 great mountains alone, to eliminate that beast. Because if that beast recovered, I'm afraid the end of the shaman tribe would really come. Xiao Bai sighed softly, said, "This shaman lady is really a heroine among women, Bodhisattva's heart, so selfless for others." The great shaman indifferently said, "In our southern border, we do not believe in Bodhisattva." Xiao Bai smiled and did not speak. The great shaman continued, "At that time among the shaman tribe, no one agreed with the shaman lady's actions. Everyone knew that once she went, most likely she would never return. But the shaman lady was determined and eventually still went. Just that accompanying her were 7 of the tribe's bravest warriors. The 8 of them entered the extremely dangerous 10,000 great mountains like that. Along the way, they cut their way through brambles and thorns, not knowing how many monsters they killed. Finally, on the 6th day, they came to the ancient cave where the beast lived. The shaman lady at this moment made an unexpected decision. She let the other 7 wait outside the cave. Only she entered the cave. The 7 warriors naturally were unwilling, but the shaman lady's determination was extremely firm, and said that even if they went in, it would not help and instead would drag her down. In the end, the 7 warriors could only agree. After the shaman lady entered the cave, there was no more news. The 7 warriors waited outside the cave for 2 whole days and 2 nights. Finally 2 of them could not bear it and wanted to rush into the cave to look for the shaman lady, but the other 5 thought that they should continue to wait and listen to the shaman lady's orders. Between the 7 warriors, they quarreled, and in the end, the 2 warriors still entered the cave, and from then on, there was no more news. Just like that, until the 5th day, when the remaining 5 warriors gradually lost their confidence, the shaman lady miraculously staggered out of the cave. At that time, she looked as if she had completely lost blood, her face frighteningly pale. But in their joy, the 5 warriors did not notice this. The shaman lady summoned the 5 warriors to her side, gave each of them a shining weapon filled with strange shaman power, and told them that these 5 sacred weapons were refined from the beast's body after she killed it. But the demon beast was a peerless monster formed from the most vicious energy in the world. Although its body was destroyed, its soul did not dissipate. The 5 warriors turned pale with fright. The shaman lady said again, "As long as these 5 sacred weapons did not return to this ancient cave, the demon beast would never be able to revive." After speaking, her body trembled continuously. Suddenly blood flowed out from her 7 orifices. The 5 warriors were shocked. The shaman lady used the last of her strength, exhorted them, for the entire shaman tribe, to guard these 5 sacred weapons forever, must not let the demon beast revive. If not, it would be the end of the shaman tribe and the world. And she herself would guard outside this ancient cave forever, using her own soul to suppress all the evildoers, locking them in the ancient cave. After reluctantly saying these, the shaman lady could not hold on any longer, stood up and passed away, and the next moment her body faced the depths of the ancient cave, turned into a stone statue. The great shaman's voice slowly faded. In the firelight, everyone's expression was strange, an indescribable expression. After a long time, Xiao Bai heaved a long sigh, said, "What a great shaman lady! But great shaman, you told us this story, for what?" The great shaman's back figure, as if bent by an invisible burden, looked exceptionally desolate. He did not answer Xiao Bai's question, instead continued, "After the 5 warriors wept bitterly and grieved, they returned to the shaman tribe, although the shaman lady unfortunately died, but the demon beast, this unprecedented enemy of the shaman tribe, was finally suppressed in that ancient cave. The shaman tribe commoners, other than sorrow, also had some joy and rejoiced. Just that, at this time, the 5 warriors whose reputations had soared because of their return from slaying the demon, because of fighting for the leader position of the shaman tribe, they fought amongst themselves. The most unfortunate thing was, every generation of shaman lady was appointed by the previous generation of shaman lady, and this generation of shaman lady did not leave any instructions, and the 5 warriors at that time all forgot to ask this question. And so, the once prosperous shaman tribe, under the quarrel of the 5 warriors, gradually split up, and the commoners each supported one of them, in the end, gradually split into the current southern border Miao, Li, Zhuang, Tu, Gao Mountain 5 tribes, and those 5 crucial sacred weapons were each controlled by the 5 tribes. When this ancient but soul-stirring story finally came to an end, Ghostly inhaled deeply, looked at the great shaman's back, slowly said, "Senior, you have said so much, don't tell me you want me to help find the Miao tribe's sacred weapons." Chapter 250. The great shaman was silent for a moment, said, "Yes." Ghostly was silent. The great shaman slowly said, "This sacred weapon concerns the lives and deaths of the southern border commoners. I only hope that you can help our southern border commoners." Ghostly's eyes twitched, said, "The southern border 5 tribes, the population is innumerable, why do you need to seek help from an outsider?" The great shaman shook his head, his voice desolate, said, "Ever since the 5 tribes split, shaman skills decline day by day. Now we can't find a decent talent able to take up this mission. You asked me to recall the soul of that friend of yours. I promised you, just that the situation you mentioned is different from the past situation in the southern border. I am also not confident, but I will try my best. Tomorrow morning, I will accompany you all to Central Plains." Ghostly and Xiao Bai were stunned, did not expect the great shaman to be in such a rush. Ghostly, for Bai Yao, was not even afraid of death. Why would he care about taking the risk to snatch some legendary sacred weapon? Just that, although he was delighted, but he could see that the great shaman was seriously injured, immediately said, "Senior, you fought last night. Don't you want to rest for a few days first?" The great shaman quietly sighed, said, "I don't have much time left. Before that, I will do my best for you, only hope that you can look at this dying old man's face. For the countless commoners of the southern border, lend a hand." Ghostly was silent. Actually, how could he not see the great shaman's frail body, but he did not expect it to be to this extent. And Xiao Bai suddenly said, "Great shaman, you said just now, the 5 sacred weapons must be returned to the ancient cave together, then that demon beast can be revived, is it?" The great shaman nodded and said, "That's right." Xiao Bai said, "Since that's the case, even if the Miao tribe lost 1 sacred weapon, there are still the other 4, you don't have to be too anxious." "2, it is 2. The great shaman suddenly interrupted, after speaking, a bout of violent coughing came from his mouth again. Xiao Bai was stunned, said, "What?" The great shaman waited until his coughing finally subsided, sighed and said, "On top of our tribe's sacred weapon Black Staff, there is another sacred weapon, Jade Bone, that was snatched from the Li tribe 200 years ago by our Miao tribe." Xiao Bai made a sound, her expression strange, and did not speak. The great shaman was silent for a moment, said, "Actually, 200 years ago, we had already sensed that something was not right, secretly received news that Zhuang, Tu, Gao Mountain, these 3 tribes' sacred weapons, in these few hundred years, suddenly, inexplicably and very strangely lost. At that time only our Miao tribe and Li tribe still had the sacred weapons in our hands. At that time, among the 5 tribes, only our Miao tribe altar shaman spell still had some power, so we snatched the sacred weapon Jade Bone from the Li tribe and safeguarded it in our altar, hoping to be safe, didn't expect in the end it was still." Ghostly and Xiao Bai did not speak. Snatching other people's sacred weapon, this kind of thing, after all, was not very glorious. The great shaman also knew this, did not wish to speak more on this, immediately turned and looked at Ghostly, said, "So the situation now is really extremely critical, the 5 sacred weapons are all lost, maybe it was that evil beast's doing. And last night that Lee tribe sorcerer's spell was basically the demon beast's black fire sorcery. I am really worried." Before he finished his words, he was already coughing. His voice was hoarse and hoarse. Ghostly breathed deeply, slowly said, "I promise you." The great shaman was overjoyed, nodded repeatedly, said, Thank you very much." Xiao Bai sat beside, suddenly said, "Great shaman, that shaman lady at that time, what was her name? I really admire her very much." The great shaman's countenance changed, sighed, slowly straightened his body, a reverent expression also surfaced on his face, slowly said, "That lady was called Linglong." The darkness without daylight, the intertwining tall black trees, the bones of humans and beasts everywhere in the forest, and the phosphorescence flickering between the eerie white bones, these were what Jean Pinger was facing right now. Ever since she tracked the evil shaman, entered the mysterious and eerie world of the 10,000 Great Mountains, after trekking through 2 layers of precipitous mountain ranges, entered a vast black forest, and what presented before her was this scene. This was her 3rd day in the Black Forest. The seemingly endless darkness ahead, like it had solidified and did not move, Jean Pinger's charming face, could not help but showed faint anxiety. She took a step forward, but there was a soft sound under her feet. She looked down and saw a white human skull rolling to the side on the ground. She wondered how long it had been since he died here. Jean Pinger sighed, used her feet to gently push, sweeping the skull to one side. Even though she was mentally prepared before entering the 10,000 Great Mountains, but Jean Pinger still did not expect this place to be so strange and sinister. Not to mention the highly toxic miasma everywhere, a little carelessness and one could die a violent death. Along the way, she met quite a number of strange beasts that she had never heard of before. To say they were strange beasts, actually it was not appropriate. Most of these things were mutated from some ferocious beasts, like a combination of tiger and leopard, boar and bear, etc., but they did not look like those intelligent strange tribes like the human fish that she had seen before. But although these strange beasts were ferocious, it was only in comparison to ordinary people. To Jean Pinger, who was from the evil sect Hehuan sect, it was not difficult to deal with, therefore the journey was still considered easy for her, just that the poisonous miasma everywhere made her on tenterhooks every day, not daring to relax for even a moment. And the evil shaman that she was pursuing from afar seemed like he did not expect someone to follow him into the 10,000 Great Mountains, so until now, Jean Pinger had not lost him, just that evil dragon beside the evil shaman really gave Jean Pinger a headache. No matter how she tried to conceal herself, whenever she went near the evil shaman, that extremely sensitive dragon would almost always be on alert. After a few times, Jean Pinger no longer dared to go near the evil shaman. Right now, Jean Pinger, using Hehuan sect's secret tracking skill, was chasing the evil shaman from afar, and ever since they entered the Black Forest, the evil shaman had never rested for 3 days, always moving at the same speed in the forest. Jean Pinger's skills were rather high, 3 days of non-stop to her, she could still hold on, but no matter what she would feel tired, and that evil shaman ahead of her seemed to not be human, always moving at the same speed. The phosphorescence flickering in the Black Forest, like the flickering light in the darkness, and also like the silent eyes in the underworld, watching this intruding girl. Suddenly, a roar was heard in the darkness, a boar head and bare body strange beast suddenly dashed out from the side, pounced towards Jean Pinger. Jean Pinger frowned, her body flew up, her white hand waved down in the air, a brilliant purple light flashed again and again in the darkness. Purple light blade. The strange beast dashed past where Jean Pinger was standing, and dashed for a few steps. Suddenly it made a strange long howl, its entire body at the same time made a muffled sound, blood splattered everywhere. This strange beast split into 2 from the middle, fell to the ground, and after twitching twice, it stopped moving. The blood that flowed out under the dim phosphorescence in the black forest gradually seeped into the ground, turning into a deep color. Before waiting for Jean Pinger to land, in the darkness ahead, suddenly innumerable beasts roared. Instantly the original peace was broken, like hundreds of beasts howling to the sky, rose and fell in the darkness. The next moment, from behind those flickering phosphorescent lights, pairs and pairs of big or small eyes appeared, glinting fiercely in the darkness. Jean Pinger breathed deeply, her face seemed to turn pale. Following a long howl, suddenly like a huge river crashing down, galloping footsteps pierced the silence of the darkness, gradually spreading, surrounding Jean Pinger in the middle. Ho! In that instant, innumerable strange beasts charged out from the darkness, pouncing towards that frail body. Jean Pinger's figure floated, dodging left and right in the horde of beasts. At the same time her hands flashed with purple light. Each time she waved, a strange beast howled and died. However, there were too many beasts that suddenly appeared. In just a short while, they had squeezed so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Jean Pinger did not even have a place to stand. In the end, she was already flying on the backs of all kinds of strange beasts. In a short while, the number of beasts that died under Jean Pinger's purple light blade had already exceeded 20, but Jean Pinger's trousers were also torn by the beast. And in the distant darkness, there seemed to be endless beasts surging out. She really did not know where did so many beasts come from in this black forest. Jean Pinger pursed her lips, knew she could not tangle with these beasts. Her right foot stretched down, tapped on the back of a tiger-head leopard-bodied beast. Her entire body leapt up, flew up. Chapter 251. Originally Jean Pinger's intention was not willing to fly out of the Black Forest. Firstly, it would expose the target, and there seemed to be poisonous miasma above the forest. Secondly, and more importantly, after flying out of the forest, to pursue the evil shaman ahead, it would be even more difficult. Just that at this moment she could not care so much. Her body flew straight up, although the beasts on the ground were ferocious, but they did not seem to be able to fly. Innumerable beasts squeezed on the ground, roaring, extremely ferocious. It was really terrifying. Just when Jean Pinger was about to reach the top of the tall trees, suddenly a strange sound was heard. The densely intertwined black trees, suddenly all seemed to come alive. Black shadows flickered, innumerable black shadows pounced down from above, mixed with a thick stench. Most likely there was also poison. Jean Pinger, although shocked, but she did not panic. Her body stopped abruptly in the air, where the purple light flashed. Immediately a purple halo appeared above her head. The next moment, those black shadows came down from the sky. Touching this purple light, sounds of cracking were heard. In an instant a dozen black shadows shattered, scattered in all directions. Looking from afar, it was the black tree branches, just that in the air. There was also a stench of black juice. Although Jean Pinger blocked the strange tree descending from the sky, but her body was still struck down, the innumerable beasts on the ground immediately became excited, roared and howled. Many even leapt up with all their might, pouncing towards Jean Pinger's body. Jean Pinger's face was pale, her hands waved continuously, the purple light surged. In that instant it moved from the top of her head to the bottom of her body. Before her body landed on the ground, a hair-raising sound was already heard. Within the purple light area, several strange beasts' bodies exploded, blood splattered everywhere. Even Jean Pinger's body was dyed red. Just that this blood stench seemed to agitate the surrounding beasts. In a blink, countless more beasts pounced over. Jean Pinger's forehead was already beaded with sweat. Without hesitation, the purple light blade danced and blocked a group of beasts. Her body floated up, using all her strength to fly forward. Right now, Jean Pinger's situation was extremely dangerous. Countless ferocious beasts pursuing below, endless strange trees obstructing above. She could not go up or down, could only use all her strength to fly forward in the middle of the forest. In the Black Forest, roars of beasts were already everywhere, reverberating far away. The black wind howled, a scene of hell on earth. Avoiding the sharp claws of the beasts that leapt into the air, Jean Pinger chopped an entire black tree that was blocking her way and flew past it. What appeared in front of her were even more monsters and endless demon-like black trees. Just like that, they fought and ran forward. After an unknown amount of time, just as Jean Pinger felt that she was gradually losing strength, suddenly, the originally dark front actually revealed a glimmer of light. Jean Pinger was overjoyed, her spirits lifted, the purple light blade exploded, chopped down a huge gray wolf that was pouncing on the ground. Her entire body flew with all her strength. The shadows danced, like demons roaring, numerous black trees pressed down from the sky. Jean Pinger was surrounded by the purple light, killing beasts she saw along the way, chopping down trees she saw, blood and flesh splattered, wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves. She forcefully fought her way out of this strange and unpredictable black forest, directly slaughtering a path out. Behind her, broken branches and beast corpses were everywhere, blood and black juice splattered everywhere. When she dashed out of the black forest, this originally alluring lady was actually covered in blood, like a blood person, indescribably hideous and terrifying. Just that, when she saw her surroundings clearly, she who was panting heavily, her countenance changed even more. Where she was at was a cliff, just a huge rock exposed outside the black forest. Below the rock, clouds drifted, the horizon light shone, as if there was a strange colorful light flowing. Jean Pinger only took a look and knew that those colorful clouds were the most poisonous miasma. Anyone caught in it would die immediately. And right at this moment, in the black forest behind her, innumerable strange beasts' roars sounded again, just behind her. Jean Pinger clenched her teeth, the hand holding the purple light blade tightened again. Swooshing and turning around, she felt a ringing sound above her head. Almost unable to stand, even her body swayed a few times. These few days, she had not had a good rest. Today she was facing innumerable ferocious strange beasts and demonic trees. Even an Iron Man would find it extremely strenuous. She was greatly shocked. A thought flashed past in a flash. Don't tell me I am going to die here. She couldn't help but secretly regretted. She should not have discovered the mysterious relationship between the evil shaman and Shangguan Su, took the risk and chased in. Just that the next moment she suddenly realized, although those beasts were still roaring and standing at her position, she could still vaguely see some beasts leaping around in the dark forest, extremely furious, but for some reason, not one of those beasts walked out of the black forest. Maybe they originally did not exist in this world and so could only live in that strange forest. This discovery made Jean Pinger finally heave a sigh of relief, and under the light, those black demonic trees seemed to freeze, did not make any more moves to attack her. Standing on the rock, she felt the faint stench of the mountain breeze blowing from the cliff behind her. Jean Pinger's body softened, almost sat down. The wind blew her clothes. She then discovered her entire body was covered in filthy beast blood. No matter what, Jean Pinger was after all a girl. This discovery made her feel disgusted, quickly lowered her head to tidy up. Suddenly, in the black forest, a loud roar was heard, instantly suppressing the innumerable beasts' roars. Before Jean Pinger could raise her head to check, a huge black figure leapt out from the black forest, pounced towards her. Jean Pinger felt the entire sky suddenly darkened. She was enveloped by that black figure. With a cry, subconsciously used the purple light blade to block above her head. The purple light blade had just lit up when the black figure had already pounced. A huge force like toppling the mountains and overturning the seas surged over. Jean Pinger's body was sent flying. In mid-air, she had already spat out blood. Her body somersaulted in the air. After a few flips, she had already flown off the rock and landed. The mountain wind whistled. In a blink she had disappeared. Ho! With a low roar, that black figure landed on the ground. It was that evil dragon beside the evil shaman. Right now it opened its ferocious mouth, a pair of ferocious eyes sweeping around, and those beasts in the Black Forest seemed to be extremely afraid of this evil dragon, no longer made any movements, all quietly ran away. The black figure swayed, the evil shaman in black unhurriedly floated out from the Black Forest, passed by the evil dragon and came to the edge of the cliff. The huge, evil dragon unhurriedly followed beside him. The evil shaman leaned forward, looked down the cliff, indistinctly rippled in the colorful clouds. Evidently something had fallen down. He turned back, nodded slightly, gently patted the evil dragon's body. The evil dragon growled. The evil shaman made a cold laugh, without even turning back, floated into the Black Forest. The evil dragon was about to follow but suddenly stopped, looked at the cliff but there was only silence, nothing had happened. The evil dragon's fierce eyes glinted, paused for a while and finally turned its head, ran towards its master's direction. A rustling sound was heard in the Black Forest and then gradually became muffled, until it disappeared. The mountain breeze blew past, swirling up the fine dust on the ground, covering the remaining blood stains, as if nothing had happened here. After a long time, suddenly a low sound, purple light flashed beside the cliff. A figure flipped up from below the rock. It was Jean Pinger. Once she landed, she immediately panted heavily. On her originally snow-white jade face, there was blood at the corner of her mouth. Evidently her injuries were not light. On her right hand, the purple light slowly shrunk, returned into her sleeve. She looked at her left hand. She didn't know when, but there was a strangely shaped knife in her left hand. The back of the knife was sawtooth, and the shape of the knife was simple and crude. The thick and short knife body was suffused with a cold light, and two words were clearly engraved on it: kill. Jean Pinger slowly raised her head, glanced at the direction where the evil shaman and the evil dragon had left. In the Black Forest, it was silent. She stared for a long time, as if thinking about something. After a long time, her eyes again returned to that strange blade in her hand. In her eyes, there seemed to be a strange light quietly turning. The mountain breeze blew past, indistinctly heard her soft muttering, "Kill life monk huh." Chapter 252. 7-Mile Cave Meow Altar. A brand new day. Even the sunlight that shone on the altar platform seemed to have a brand new taste. Ghostly and Xiao Bai stood on the platform in front of the altar halfway up the mountain, looking down at the land ravaged by the flames of war. Everywhere in the ruins, the Miao people walked in and out, looking down from above. They looked like busy ants for their home. Xiao Bai sighed, turned and spoke to Ghostly, who was standing beside. "You better think it through. The monsters in the 10,000 Great Mountains are not so easy to deal with." Ghostly's expression did not change, said, "I am not even afraid of death. What else do I have to fear?" Xiao Bai shrugged her shoulders, smiled bitterly and shook her head. At this moment, a strange cry was heard beside them. Both of them turned to look. It was Xiao Hui running over, just that its running posture was a little strange. After a while, both of their eyes unexpectedly landed on the monkey's hands. Xiao Hui had one in each hand, both carrying a big bag. It was the big wine bags that the Miao people used to hold their wine. Ghostly was stunned for a long time, slowly turned to look at Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai smiled bitterly and said, "Don't look at me, I also don't know." Xiao Hui very quickly ran over, looking at its expression. It was completely different from its master and Xiao Bai, who were preoccupied with their thoughts, obviously very excited, grinning from ear to ear. A faint wine fragrance wafted out from the two big wine bags in its hands. The two wine bags were bulging, seemed to be filled with the Miao strong wine, very different from the few days before when there was only a small bag left. Yesterday, when Ghostly, Xiao Bai and the great shaman were having a detailed discussion, the monkey Xiao Hui was really bored staying in the eerie altar. The monkey was lively by nature. How could it endure it, and quietly slipped out? And Ghostly at that time was preoccupied with his thoughts, surprised and delighted. He did not notice Xiao Hui had slipped away. Xiao Hui unknowingly recalled the fine wine that day. Its craving was aroused, and it slipped down the mountain to the 7-Mile Cave. After the fierce battle, the Miao people's homes were destroyed. It was the time of chaos, and in addition Xiao Hui looked just like a gray monkey. Who would notice it? After a few rounds of searching, taking advantage of the chaos, the monkey actually found 2 big bags of unopened strong liquor in the ruins. Last night, Xiao Hui had hidden the 2 big bags of wine in some secret place. Early this morning, when they were about to leave, the monkey ran out and dragged the 2 big bags of wine back, obviously intending to savor it along the way. Just that right now its master Ghostly and Xiao Bai's expressions were strange. Xiao Hui was puzzled, opened its eyes and looked at the 2 of them. After a moment, Xiao Bai covered her mouth and giggled, said to Ghostly, "Forget it, you have promised the Miao people such a big thing, even if you take their 2 bags of wine, it is also nothing." Before she finished, she started laughing. Ghostly shook his head and slowly turned around, leaving Xiao Hui staring with its monkey eyes. Looking at Xiao Bai and then at Ghostly, it put down a wine bag and used one hand to scratch its head, looking puzzled. Deep inside the altar, the Miao tribe leader Tu Magu and the great shaman sat facing each other. There was no one else around them. Tu Magu was silent for a long time. The great shaman also did not speak. A suffocating atmosphere floated in the air. Finally, Tu Magu's expression changed, as if he could not hold it in any longer, said, "Great shaman, your injuries are so serious, why must you still follow these 2 Central Plains people?" The great shaman sighed softly and said, "Didn't I tell you just now?" Tu Magu hatefully said, "The Li tribe snatched our sacred weapon, even if we have to risk our lives we must get it back. Why must we seek help from outsiders?" The great shaman shook his head and said, "You are wrong." Tu Magu was stunned, said, "What?" The great shaman was silent for a moment, quietly said, "If it is really the Li tribe who snatched our sacred weapon, I don't need to be so worried. I'm afraid that AI. Tu Magu did not understand, said, "Great shaman, what do you mean?" The great shaman said, "Do you still remember that legend of the demon beast passed down from generation to generation in our Miao tribe?" Tu Magu's countenance changed greatly, exclaimed, "Don't tell me that legend is true?" The great shaman laughed bitterly and said, "It was originally true, that year Lady Ling Long sacrificed herself to seal the demon beast in the subdue demon cave. She ordered her descendants to never let the 5 demon beast sacred weapons return to the cave at the same time. But until today, the 5 sacred weapons have all been lost. I'm afraid this is really the omen of the demon beast's resurrection." Tu Magu's expression changed, as the Miao tribe leader. Naturally he knew the weight of that legend, but after a long time, he still could not help but said, "Great shaman, under such circumstances, all the more you cannot leave this place in case. With you around, our tribe will feel more at ease." The great shaman silently shook his head, said, "This old life of mine, at most only have another 30 days left." Tu Magu's body shook. The great shaman sighed and said, "Actually, how would I be willing to leave? If I go, I'm afraid I will die in a foreign land. But now that the southern border 5 tribes are all divided, the talents are all withering, if I am not wrong, I'm afraid no one can handle the crisis. That Central Plains young man although is not old but he possesses unusual skills, that black stick beside him, the baleful energy is heavy, the evil energy is great, it is something I have never seen before in my life. But the most important thing is—" He looked meaningfully at Tu Magu, lowered his voice, quietly said, "The most important thing is the so-called Inferno Mirror, known as the essence of all fires, is with him." Tu Magu was shocked, said, "What, this thing is not burning incense?" The great shaman signaled with his eyes. Tu Magu understood, and did not speak, but the shock in his eyes only increased. The great shaman unhurriedly said, "That day when he met me for the first time, the divine dog stone statue behind me already had a strange sign, the sacred fire even gave a warning, and the 2 demon beast sacred weapons Black Staff and Jade Bone were both uneasy, if not for the supreme sacred weapon Inferno Mirror, that suppressed the demon beast, there would be no other. As for how this sacred weapon leaked out from Fenxiang Valley, I don't know." Tu-Ma-gu was silent. The great shaman paused for a moment and continued. Afterwards, when I was speaking, I purposely revealed the origins of the Inferno Mirror. Those two were indeed shocked. Especially when I mentioned the 8 Savage Inferno formation, their expressions changed greatly. Most likely they must be closely related to this magical weapon formation. Tu-Ma-gu heaved a long sigh. Obviously these words were something he had never thought of before. The great shaman indifferently said, "You also know, the legend passed down from generation to generation in our Miao tribe, only this Inferno Mirror and 8 Savage Inferno formation can suppress the demon beasts. Now, not to mention that the Inferno Mirror is not in our hands. Even if we snatch it from that young man, I'm afraid no one can activate it, and also that unfathomable 8 Savage Inferno formation, nobody knows about it. So, in such a situation, that young man is really our southern border's only hope. Even if I die in a foreign land, I will also go with him. Only hope that before I die, I can save his friend's life. Hope that on account of this, he will help our Miao tribe in the future." Tu-Ma-gu's lips trembled slightly, the wrinkles on his aged face deepened. Unknowingly, a tear quietly trickled down. Facing the great shaman, he slowly crouched down, placed his head on the cold ground. The great shaman smiled, his expression also somewhat desolate, said, "After I leave, all of you don't have to worry. If that young man has the heart, I believe he will send my remains back to my hometown. The matters here will all depend on you." Tu-Ma-gu did not raise his head, his voice low, choked with sobs, said, "Great shaman, don't worry." The great shaman unhurriedly said, "Once I go, I will only die. Actually it is nothing much. But you are in the southern border, the coming days are turbulent, the other 4 tribes do not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Seeing our Miao tribe losing power, I'm afraid they will inevitably hit us when we are down. And in the 10,000 great mountains, the demon beasts may revive at any time. A calamity is imminent, you shoulder the heavy burden, you have to take care of yourself." Tu-Ma-gu clenched his teeth, agreed. The great shaman slowly stood up, looked around, suddenly said, "If the situation is really critical in the future, although this 7-mile cave is our Miao tribe's place of residence for generations, but it is not impossible to abandon. As long as we are alive, there will be hope in the future." Tu-Ma-gu's face turned pale again, slowly said, "Yes." The great shaman heaved a long sigh, unhurriedly walked out. When that hunchbacked figure, with Tu-Ma-gu's support, followed by Ghostly and Xiao Bai, walked down from the altar, not many people noticed. But following the footsteps, the figure of the great shaman, who had not appeared in the 7-mile cave streets for a long time, was finally noticed by the Miao people. Following cries of surprise, more and more Miao people left their work and gathered over. The great shaman smiled, kept waving to the Miao people around him, but he did not stop, kept walking towards the exit of the 7-mile cave. Finally, the Miao people gradually felt something was wrong. In the crowd, someone started to shout loudly in Miao language, although Ghostly and Xiao Bai did not understand, but they knew what the Miao people were shouting about. Chapter 253. The great shaman's expression also seemed somewhat desolate on his weathered face. The smile slowly disappeared, replacing it was clearly a kind of sorrow. Just that he was still silent, only waving his hand, slowly walking away. Tu-Ma-gu also stopped, stood at the front of the crowd, quietly watching that hunched-back figure. The cries and exclamations in the crowd had already become a din. Many were panicking, and even more had already knelt down towards that gradually disappearing old man. Ghostly, who was walking behind the great shaman, quietly looked at that old man, suddenly discovered that old face. Unknowingly, tears were streaming down. Finally, they reached the tunnel that led out of the valley. The cries behind them had already resounded through the entire valley. The old man's body started to tremble. Suddenly, he abruptly turned around, once again gazed at this land, this valley, this sky. The Miao people far away exclaimed, many of them jumped up in surprise. However, the next moment, the great shaman shut his eyes tightly, as if he wanted to carve everything on this land into his heart, frowned tightly, once again turned around. In the valley, a sudden silence. Innumerable gazes seemed to be silently shouting behind him. The muscles on the great shaman's face twitched slightly, slowly stepped out, disappeared into that tunnel. In the 7-mile cave, silence. After a long time, not knowing who was the first to cry out, the next moment, the entire valley was filled with sorrowful sobbing sound. 10,000 great mountains, passing through the black forest and then over 7 treacherous mountain ranges. It was a tall mountain shrouded in black air all year round, the wind howling. And in this barren mountain, without a single tree, not a single blade of grass, there was a huge cave. The cave entrance was 3 zhang high, 5 zhang wide. Wind howled out all year round, mixed with sharp sounds, as if a certain enraged spirit, howling incessantly. In the middle of the cave entrance, a stone statue stood upright, the size of a real person, looked like a beautiful lady, facing the depths of the subdued demon cave, stood silently. The cold wind, howling all year round, blew incessantly on the stone statue, making a deep sound, like in a raging storm, that fragile wooden plank that blocked out the wind and rain. Just that, she seemed to never retreat. The black-clothed lich was standing in front of the stone statue, staring at it silently. The evil dragon beside him seemed to be especially afraid of this stone statue. It subconsciously distanced itself from it. After looking around for a while, it let out a cry and ran up the mountain. Not long after, he disappeared into the black gas. The bone-chilling cold wind fluttered the evil shaman's black clothes. In this desolate scenery, this person seemed to gradually become illusory, with a trace of unreality. He continued to stare for a long time, so long that even Jean Pinger began to wonder if this black-clothed man had also turned into a stone statue. Luckily escaping from that black forest, at the same time accidentally discovered a killer knife stabbed deeply into the rock crevice below the cliff, Jean Pinger vaguely guessed, could it be that Ghost King sect General Kill-to-Life monk had actually entered this place earlier than her? However, although the killer saber was still there, the killer monk was nowhere to be seen. Since he was gone and his magical weapon was still there, one could well imagine the danger. Perhaps the killer monk had most likely met with a mishap. The grand myriad mountains was truly filled with killing intent at every step. But after Jean Pinger pondered, she still secretly followed the evil shaman's footstep. Along the way, she knew that the evil shaman had special skills and was even more careful, not daring to be careless. She did not dare to carelessly approach that black-clothed monster and that evil dragon. In addition, the evil shaman most likely thought that the person following him had died in the Black Forest and did not notice Jean Pinger behind him. Just like that, Jean Pinger followed him all the way to the subdued Devil Ancient Cave. Right now Jean Pinger was crouching behind a small hill, watching that black figure from afar, could not help but start to wonder if this black-clothed man was going to stand in front of this female statue for the rest of his life? From arriving at the subdued Devil Cave till now, the evil shaman had already stared motionlessly at this statue for more than 8 hours. Just when Jean Pinger was about to close her eyes and fall asleep from boredom, the evil shaman's figure finally moved. Jean Pinger perked up and quickly looked carefully. The black-robed lich seemed to have gone through a long period of contemplation, or perhaps a struggle, before he finally made a decision. He silently bowed towards the female statue, and respectfully bowed towards it. From afar, Jean Pinger saw that evil shaman, facing the statue, quietly said something, but because it was too far away, she could not hear it at all. After which, the evil shaman's body slowly turned and floated deeper into the subdued Devil Ancient Cave. Jean Pinger frowned tightly. The mystery in her heart grew bigger and bigger. That ancient cave obviously had some great secret. It was very possible that it was where the mysterious person Shangguan Su and the evil shaman were talking about was at. But in this extremely desolate place with barren hills and unruly rivers, why would there be such a female statue, and just right in the middle of the cave entrance? And looking at the evil shaman's expression towards this statue, it was obvious that he had a close relationship with this statue. Most likely there was an unexplainable past. Just when Jean Pinger saw that the evil shaman was about to disappear into the ancient cave, she planned to lean out and quietly sneak over to take a closer look at the statue. Suddenly, the evil shaman's body suddenly stopped. Jean Pinger was shocked, almost thought that she had exposed herself in her haste, couldn't help but feel regretful. Just as she was panicking, she realized that the evil shaman did not even turn back to look at her, as if he did not notice her. She then felt relieved, quickly hid herself and again secretly peeked out, looked towards that ancient cave. With this look, she could not help but stare. Just in front of that female statue, at the entrance of the subdued devil ancient cave, a ball of white gas suddenly appeared in the air, forming a strong contrast with the surrounding black gas and wind. And the evil shaman also stopped, quietly watching this ball of white gas. The white gas gathered more and more, gradually condensed into a human shape. From Jean Pinger's point of view, it was a tall man, right hand holding a huge sword, left hand holding a huge shield. His body was completely formed by the white gas, swaying in the wind, but his body movements and even the expression on his face were all clearly visible. Jean Pinger was stunned speechless. After a long while she inhaled a breath of cold air, quietly muttered to herself, "What a good nether spirit!" She was from the evil faction, more or less knew a little about this kind of ghostly matter. Since ancient times, humans grow old and die, only the soul does not perish. When one's lifespan ends, the soul will leave the body and reincarnate into the next life, generation after generation, reincarnating endlessly. But in this world, there are vengeful spirits, because of greed, anger, infatuation, the three poisons, fear, evil, fear, longing for the mortal world, looking back to the past, unwilling to be reincarnated. They are nether spirits. When Ghostly was still Jadian's little disciple Shah Danan, he and Anan fell into the forsaken abyss in Kongsang Mountain's Thousand Bats ancient cave. At that heartless sea, they encountered countless of nether spirits in the abyss. But those nether spirits were mortal souls, killed by Bloodforger, and could not be reincarnated. Normal people will be harmed when they encounter them, but in the eyes of cultivators, they were not powerful evildoers, so Shah Danan and Anan could survive for a long time before their cultivation was completed. The nether spirit that Jean Pinger saw was not a normal nether spirit, it was the rarest legendary, evil spirit. This kind of soul was most likely a person with profound cultivation when they were alive, but after death, because of some extremely deep resentment and infatuation, they actually abandoned the afterlife and were willing to protect something, becoming a desolate wild ghost, drifting between the living world. This kind of evil spirit, their cultivation is already quite high, and with the ghost power after death, they are even more ferocious. Normal cultivators are not their opponent, it can be said they are 1 in 10,000 ferocious ghosts. But cultivators usually value the afterlife more than normal people, rarely abandon the afterlife, that is why evil spirits are so rare. When Jean Pinger suddenly saw it, she was really surprised. But looking over, that black evil shaman did not seem to be surprised. Facing this evil spirit that blocked his way, he only slowly raised his head. The evil spirit's body formed by the white gas was extremely tall, almost blocking the entire subdued devil ancient cave entrance. The evil shaman looked at this evil spirit holding a sword and shield like a god of war, suddenly sighed. "You are finally willing to come out and see me?" he faintly said. The evil spirit coldly stared at the evil shaman, his white gas and the evil shaman's black clothes and black shadow, like two extremes that would never compromise. "You are a traitor who betrayed the lady. What right do you have to say such words?" The evil shaman's body seemed to tremble. He who was always unfathomable was actually stabbed by such words to the point that his entire body was in pain. He raised his head and looked at that angry face. After a long while, He remained silent, slowly lowered his head. Chapter 254. Move aside. The evil shaman demon was silent for a long time, slowly said. That evil spirit coldly looked at him, said, "Before the goddess statue, don't tell me you still have no remorse?" The evil shaman demon's black clothes moved again, seemed like under the black clothes. He was also very agitated, just that, he did not turn back to look at that female statue. "I am not wrong, it is the goddess who is wrong," he said bitterly. "Ho!" The evil spirit suddenly roared, the roar like thunder in the horizon, instantly fell on the mortal world, directly blasting sand and stones away. "Bastard! You shameless bastard, you actually dare to say such words!" Jean Pinger frowned tightly, could not help but covered her ears. At such a distance, she could not hear the conversation clearly, but the evil spirit's sudden roar was like thunder beside her, making her ears ring. Far away, the evil shaman demon's face was veiled. His expression could not be seen, but his voice was getting more and more desolate and pained. "I am not wrong, I am not wrong," he muttered to himself, not knowing if he was talking to the evil spirit, or to himself, or maybe, he was talking to the statue behind him. "Blackwood, quickly kneel down before the goddess statue and beg for forgiveness. Put an end to your delusions, and we will still be brothers. If not, from today onwards, don't blame me for being heartless." The evil shaman demon's body shook, looked up and said, You still acknowledge me as your brother?" "Yes." The evil spirit shouted, "As long as you put an end to your delusions, after begging for forgiveness, wait for the goddess with me, guard this subdued devil ancient cave, you Blackwood will forever be my brother." The evil shaman demon's black clothes fluttered in the wind, indistinctly his agitation could be felt, just that, after a moment, his body gradually calmed down, his entire person also did not speak. And that evil spirit looked at him, his original expectant expression, finally turned into an even deeper rage. "You still not turning back?" the evil spirit angrily shouted. The evil shaman demon's voice right now had completely calmed down, like his usual tone, quietly said, "I have no way of turning back." "Ho!" the ferocious spirit bellowed, the huge sword slashed down, waving in front of the evil shaman. In that instant the sand flew up, the land near and far seemed to tremble. Jean Pinger's countenance changed, this fierce spirit's skills were much higher than she had imagined. But that shaman demon did not have any fear, coldly looked at that fierce spirit, said, "Big brother." The fierce spirit angrily said, "Shut up, I am not your big brother." The shaman demon indifferently said, "Even if you do not acknowledge me, I will still acknowledge you as my big brother forever." But at that time it was really the lady's fault. Now that things have come to this, I will help the lady to complete her unfinished task. The evil spirit became even more enraged, shouted, "Are you crazy?" The shaman demon inhaled deeply, said, "Even if I am crazy, I will still do this." After speaking, his body floated, drifted towards the subdued devil cave. The evil spirit was obviously enraged. With a loud roar, the huge sword slashed down towards the evil shaman's head. The power of this sword was even stronger than before. The entire ancient cave entrance's stone walls started to tremble, looking like it was about to collapse. Jean Pinger watched from afar, still couldn't help but worry for the evil shaman demon, just that the evil shaman demon had already entered the subdued devil cave. His figure was blocked by the stone walls. How he fought with the evil spirit, Jean Pinger could not see. And in the ancient cave, after the sand and stones settled down, the evil spirit bellowed incessantly, but the evil shaman demon's figure had already disappeared. Only in the deep darkness of the ancient cave, the evil shaman demon's faint voice was heard. "Big brother, you are a peerless hero in life and in death. Just that, we are now the same kind of people, why must you?" The evil spirit's shrill cry, the cry was mournful, as if there was a raging fire burning in his heart and lungs. The subdued devil cave became silent, Obviously the evil shaman demon had already gone far away. The evil spirit was silent. After a moment, he unhurriedly turned towards the stone statue at the subdued devil cave entrance. The huge white body slowly twisted, bursts of white air, like green smoke lingering around, twining around the female statue. Lady! A low choked sob, the sorrow and vicissitudes of a lifetime, with an indistinct trace of helplessness, quietly reverberated between heaven and earth. And his figure, also gradually drifted, slowly disappeared in the black air and wind. The subdued devil cave again resumed its tranquility, as if nothing had happened. Only that female statue still stood there quietly, and the never-ending eerie cries, from the depths of the subdued devil cave, incessantly shouting. That voice seemed to be even more mournful. Central Plains, south, majestic Fox Mountain. Under the desolate mountain range, concealed the evil sect Ghost King sect headquarters. Numerous evil sect disciples bustled in and out. In the deepest part of this place, in that huge natural cave, Ghost King expressionlessly stood on the platform, looking at the two ancient strange beasts in the blood pool below. Kuei Nyo soaked in the blood water, motionless, even its eyes seemed to have dimmed. And the yellow bird which was struggling with all its might a while ago, right now seemed to be suppressed by some strange force. Its mind also became weary, quietly soaked in the blood water, no longer moving. The hidden dragon cauldron suspended alone in the air, glimmered with red light, slowly turning, projecting rays of red light screen, enveloping Kuei Nyo and yellow bird. A thick stench of blood filled the cave. A black figure suddenly flashed. Ghost King Sect's most mysterious Mr. Ghost flew up, appeared beside Ghost King. Ghost King looked at him, said, "How is it?" Mr. Ghost's attire looked similar to that mysterious evil shaman demon who appeared in the southern border, both dressed in black, a black veil covering his face, just that his voice sounded even older. Right now his black veil moved slightly, nodded slightly, said, "It's almost done. Kuei Nyo has been subdued. Yellow Bird in less than 3 days will also be able to return to the formation. 4 Divinities Blood formation is already half completed." Ghost King did not speak, slowly nodded. Mr. Ghost indifferently said, "Disregarding the good faction, just half of this 4 Divinities Blood formation's power is already enough to wipe out Wan Du clan and He-Huan sect." Ghost King glanced at him, slowly said, "What I want to deal with is Qin Yun sect Zhu Xian sword formation." Mr. Ghost was silent. Ghost King turned, unhurriedly walked away, at the same time said, "I will speed up the search for the other 2 spiritual beasts. The matters here, will leave it to you." Mr. Ghost watched that figure gradually walking away. A strange glint flashed in his eyes, not knowing what he was thinking. After a long time, he then turned, quietly pondered, suddenly sighed. His figure flashed, again flew down to the blood pool. In the ancient cave, the stench of blood suddenly thickened again. Ghost King walked out from that blood pool ancient cave, his hands clasped behind his back, walked through the long tunnel, came to a crossroad. After hesitating for a moment, a trace of sadness seemed to flash past his face. He turned and walked towards the right side of the path. Along the way, he met many Ghost King sect disciples. When they saw Ghost King, they all lowered their heads and paid their respects. Ghost King ignored them and just slowly walked past, until the end of the path. It was that cold stone chamber. He stood in front of the door. His expression, which was as steady as Mount Tai, suddenly seemed to have aged a lot. A low sigh, he pushed open the stone door and walked in. A gust of cold air hit him in the face. Ghost King closed the stone door. The cold stone chamber was not big. The furnishings were extremely simple, only a cold stone platform in the middle of the chamber. Bai Yao, her face so pale that there was not a trace of blood, quietly lying on it, both her hands at her chest, holding the golden He-Huan bell. A girl quietly sat beside her, staring at her. Ghost King walked up. His eyes landed on his beloved daughter's face. The corner of his eyes suddenly twitched, even the hands behind him, could not help but instantly clench tightly. 10 years, it had been a whole 10 years. For 10 years, there was not a day when he was not sad for his daughter, to the extent that he even deliberately reduced the number of visits to Baiyao, in case he could not extricate himself. His only beloved daughter, his voice also became deep and hoarse. Yuji, let me and Baiyao alone for a while. Yuji slowly stood up, turned, slightly bowed to Ghost King and then walked out. Ghost King's eyes swept past her figure, did not speak. Bang! A low sound, the stone door opened and closed. In the cold stone chamber, only father and daughter were left. Ghost King slowly sat down beside Baiyao. Baiyao, father has not come to see you for a long time, are you angry at me? His deep voice quietly reverberated in the stone chamber, carrying endless sorrow. Only Baiyao was still lying calmly. Ghost King stared at that beautiful face in a daze. You and your mother look so alike. Even your temperament is almost the same. Do you know, Baiyao? When your mother passed away, I did not get to see her for the last time, but I know she entrusted you to me. For so many years, I was afraid that I did not treat you well. I would not have the face to meet your mother in the netherworld. But, this person who was feared and hated by countless people, right now even his voice started to tremble, saying what he had said countless times in these 10 years, said, how can you be so silly? Baiyao was silent, still lying quietly before him. On her pale face, there was not a trace of pain or sadness, on the contrary, indistinctly a faint smile. Baiyao, Ghost King quietly called out, did not speak again. He just sat there quietly, accompanying his only beloved daughter. Until, on the stone door of the cold stone chamber, suddenly a knocking sound was heard. Ghost King frowned, a murderous glint flashed past his eyes. These 10 years, other than that ghostly, no one dared to disturb him when he was accompanying his daughter. As for ghostly, in his eyes, there was only Baiyao. Ghost King did not say anything to him. But now that ghostly was not here, someone dared to violate Ghost King's taboo. It was really rare. Ghost King snorted, stood up, used his sleeve to gently wipe away the indistinct tears at the corner of his eyes, breathed deeply. When he turned around again, he was already that Ghost King that countless people revered. He unhurriedly walked to the door, opened it and walked out. Outside the door stood only one person, Qing Long. Ghost King frowned. Qing Long was the leader of the 4 great holy envoys of Ghost King's sect, and was also his trusted aide. He had always relied on him. And he had always been cautious in his actions, would never do anything to disturb him, and Baiyao. Seemed like something big had happened. Ghost King looked over. Qing Long quietly said, there is news from the southern border. Ghost King frowned and said, what is it? Qing Long glanced at Ghost King, said, I heard that Ghostly has already found the person who knows the soul return unusual skill, and brought him back. This was not a trivial matter. Ghost King, who was usually calm and composed, also beamed with joy, could not help but stepped forward and said, really? Qing Long nodded, sighed in his heart, the deep bond of flesh and blood, it was really something that no one could bear to part with. Ghost King looked up at the sky, inhaled deeply, calmed himself down but his hands were still trembling slightly, said, who is that person, how did Ghostly find him? Qing Long said, that person is one of the southern border 5 tribes, Miao tribe's great shaman. As for how did Ghostly know that he possesses the soul return unusual skill, that I don't know. Ghost King nodded and said, don't care about him, as long as he can save Yaoer. If he can save Yaoer, then it's fine. His words were earnest. He really wished that the great shaman and Ghostly were in front of him right now. How many days have they left? How much longer will it take for them to reach here? Ghost King asked. Qing Long said, this news was leaked by Ghostly himself to our spies in the southern region. I heard that because that great shaman was seriously injured and unable to fly, so he could only walk slowly. Ghost King was stunned, said, seriously injured, what happened? Qinglong said, I heard that it was the internal strife between the southern border 5 tribes. Other than that, he hesitated for a moment, said, seems like Ghostly was also seriously injured, and he was injured by the good faction. Ghost King's gaze froze, said, what happened? Qinglong shook his head and said, the specific situation is still not clear. The southern border has always been where Fenxiang Valley's power is. It is difficult for our people to infiltrate. I'm afraid we will have to wait for Ghostly to return and ask again. But over at the southern side, it has always been Lao by who is in charge. This time the news was also sent back by him. But in his words, it seemed. Ghost King coldly said, what did Bai Hu say? Qinglong was silent for a while, said, Bai Hu mentioned that together with Ghostly, there was another, a foxy lady. Ghost King's countenance changed. Qinglong glanced at Ghost King, slowly continued, other than that, Bai Hu also specially mentioned in the news, that monkey beside Ghostly, seemed to be different. A cold glint flashed in Ghost King's eyes. After a long while, he then slowly said, 3-eyed spiritual monkey, has it already opened its spiritual eyes? Qinglong was silent, did not speak. Outside the icy cold stone chamber, it suddenly quietened down. Ghost King slowly turned. His eyes landed on that stone door. His eyes seemed to penetrate through this thick stone door, saw that serene lady. Yao, or are you looking at, father? Ghost King in his heart unhurriedly recited. 10,000 great mountains, subdue devil ancient cave. Jean Pinger quietly moved, nearing that mysterious eerie ancient cave entrance. Right now, the evil shaman had already gone in for a long time. That evil spirit had also disappeared and never appeared again. The entire ancient cave entrance was cold and silent. Only the wind from the subdued devil ancient cave was still howling incessantly. Gradually, Jean Pinger neared that statue of the lady. She cautiously neared. The surroundings were still very quiet. Until she was 3 chi away from the statue, there was only the howling of the wind. There was no other movement. Jean Pinger suddenly felt as if she could hear her own heartbeat. She composed herself and carefully looked around, especially at the subdued devil ancient cave. It was pitch black inside, bottomless, as if there was a terrifying demon hiding in the darkness, opening its ferocious mouth, roaring incessantly. Jean Pinger frowned slightly. She instinctively felt that in that darkness, evil energy surged to the sky, causing her blood and chi to surge. It was really unbearable. Just that at this moment, her curiosity far surpassed everything else. That female statue in her heart was really a mysterious existence. No matter what, she must take a good look at this statue. In the next moment, her eyes fell on the stone statue. This must be a beautiful lady. Jean Pinger softly muttered in her heart. Her graceful eyebrows were slender across her eyes, and her face, which was shaped like a melon seed, had slightly stiff lines. Her lips were pursed, her eyes determined, like after thousands of trials and tribulations, she finally made up her mind. But her face, her expression, was strangely gentle, a little sorrowful, a little sour. Thousands of years of wind and frost, can it wear away the beauty of the past? You stand alone in the years, for whom? Jean Pinger silently watched, slowly stretched out her hand, touched the statue. She did not notice, behind her, at the moment her hand touched the statue, suddenly white gas appeared, gradually condensed, gradually formed into a human shape, revealing that evil spirit. Under her hand it was a coarse stone. After countless years of cold wind and snow, the scars of wind and rain, as if under Jean Pinger's fair hand, one by one, revealed, from the statue to her palm to her heart. This lady, what kind of lady was she exactly? Jean Pinger seemed to be infatuated, deeply attracted by that female statue. Behind that evil spirit had fully appeared, her face angry, the enormous sword raised up high, suddenly with a loud shout, abruptly slashed down. Chapter 255. The darkness stretched endlessly, only the sound of the wind howling became more mournful. The evil shaman walked in the dark tunnels of the subdued devil ancient cave, like a e'en spirit walking towards the nine nether. The deeper he walked into the ancient cave, the wider it became, but the surrounding darkness also became deeper. Walking on this gloomy and horrifying path, the evil shaman could even close his eyes and walk forward. For so many years, he had wandered here alone, and now, he was finally going to change his own fate with his own hands. Perhaps, and the fate of countless people in the world. The e'en wind howled, just in front of him. A spot of faint light suddenly lit up in front of him, even though that light was so dim, but in this stretch of darkness, it was especially striking. The evil shaman stopped. That faint light flickered gently in the darkness, flickering indeterminately, like beckoning, like enticing, like yearning, like ridiculing. The wind blew his black clothes, just like in the past countless years. He stared at that place. Many years ago, he was also standing here, but at that time, he still had his brother beside him, and before him, there was a thin and weak figure who seemed to be able to block out the heaven and earth. And now, there was only him alone. Nyang Nyang. He lowered his head slightly and called out in a low voice. Then, he floated forward towards that faint light, like a moth flying determinately. The faint light flourished. The e'en wind in the ancient cave suddenly became more violent. Originally there was only a spot of light, slowly spread out from that spot, slowly illuminating the surroundings. On the uneven ground, rotten white bones were everywhere. Some of them were humans, some of them were ferocious beasts. Under the illumination of the dim light, countless densely packed and crisscrossing cracks appeared on the huge cave wall and the hard rock. It was as if someone had torn it apart with their bare hand. It was a ghastly sight. In the darkness, a voice in the deepest part of that dim light, carrying an icy chill, gently reverberated. "You are back." The voice was long, reverberating in this ancient cave walls. The evil shaman did not speak. He only stood in that spot of light, stood there for a moment, then stretched out his arm from his black clothes. In his hand was the black staff inlaid with bone jade. Ho! A roar suddenly resounded like thunder, causing a commotion in the ancient cave. The surrounding darkness instantly retreated. In the depths of the dim light, in the blink of an eye, a glaring light flashed out, like countless tentacles of the devil, towards the lich demon, towards the two sacred tools, howling madly. Even the stone walls of the ancient cave, which had stood there for millions of years, began to shake. Large and small rocks began to fall. At this moment, the whistling, mournful e'en winds sounded like heavy, longing breath. "Do you still remember what Her Highness looked like?" The lich stared at the glaring radiance that was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, and suddenly said this quietly. In the strong light, the flickering light seemed to freeze for a moment. The lich's black robes fluttered in the strong e'en wind. Even his voice sounded uncertain. "Her statue is still standing at the entrance of the cave." In the depths of the light, there was no sound, only the flickering light, illuminating the evil lich's figure. The evil lich did not speak, unhurriedly drifted up, drifted into the depths of the light. A spacious flat ground appeared. This place was completely different from the outside. The solid stone walls were mostly intact, and on the ground, there were many huge skeletons, and most of them were intact. Counting carefully, there were as many as 13 of them. These 13 skeletons were of different shapes, emanating thick evil energy, formed a circle with varying distances, all facing inwards and their backs outwards, as if guarding something. In the black, eerie, empty eye sockets, there seemed to be a cold gaze. Following the evil lich's sudden appearance, it started to approach this strange circle. Suddenly, in the cold, eerie wind, a sound that made one's teeth sour. On these skeletons, a few heads started to turn, slowly turned and looked towards the evil lich. In this heart-stopping, terrifying moment, the evil lich did not seem to care about these skeletons. His gaze, from the beginning to the end, was only looking at one direction. That was in the middle of the circle formed by the 13 skeletons. A skeleton the size of a human was quietly lying on a white jade platform that was only 3 inches tall. What was different from the skeletons around it was that this human skeleton was still covered with silk. It was unknown how many years had passed, but under the illumination of the dim light, the color of the silk was still incomparably bright. All of the light in the surroundings, even the whistling wind, were emitted from this set of white bones. The evil lich slowly drifted near this skeleton. The light circulated. The strange light was sometimes long and sometimes short, as if in the unseen world, there was a pair of eyes watching him. Around him, all the 13 skeletons suddenly made sounds, almost like they were revived at the same time. The heads turned, the deep eye sockets stared at the evil lich. The next moment, that piece of silk soared up, floated in the air. As if there was a low growl, in that instant the dazzling light shone out from under the silk, like an unstoppable arrow leaving the bow, whistled out in all directions. Woo! A sound, the evil lich could even feel that the light with surging evil power rushed past his ears. The violent sound of the wind, mixed with eerie cold laughter, started to reverberate in this ancient cave. Those 13 skeletons suddenly raised their heads together, howled to the sky. In this strange atmosphere, the evil lich slowly landed in front of the white bones. In the white light, that human-sized skeleton clearly had 5 broken places: the right hand, left ankle, larynx, skull, and the entire spine was gone. Right now, reflecting the light emitted by the bones, a white pearl was placed on his right hand, a jade plate on his left ankle, and at the place where the larynx was broken, a ring was placed. The evil lich unhurriedly took out the jade bone embedded on the black staff, bit by bit, and then gently placed it on the skull of the white bones. In the middle of the forehead there happened to be a small hole. The jade bone was perfectly placed in. In the darkness there seemed to be a voice, calling out from afar. The evil lich's body suddenly trembled, his entire body swayed, the light reflected in his eyes, like 2 balls of burning white flames. That flame burning, whose soul and body was it? He seemed to call out softly, but no one could hear clearly what he said. The next moment, he placed the black staff in the middle of the white bones, at the place of the spine. Suddenly everything was still. The whistling wind stopped, the dazzling white light disappeared, the darkness like a boundless sea, surging waves silently rushed up, drowning everything. Who was it, silently waiting in the darkness? That was the deepest darkness, or the daybreak of fantasy. Everything calmed down, just like the desolate silence that hadn't changed since time immemorial. The white bones stopped shouting and became silent. A voice, in the deepest part of the darkness and silence, quietly sounded, "Bang! Bang! Bang bang!" That was the sound of a heartbeat, brimming with new vitality. The surroundings were still pitch black, but the magical heartbeat sound gradually became louder. Slowly, it started to sound of flowing water. No, it was not the sound of water, it was the surging blood vessels, whistling out from the heart, carrying endless joy and unstoppable vigor, dancing wildly in the darkness. After sleeping for countless years, after endless coldness, once again warmth. Who was it, quietly panting in the darkness? That surging sound became more and more violent, like the cries of thousands of years of resentment from the imprisoned soul. Every drop of reborn blood carried madness and unyieldingness. Slowly, the strange sounds around started to sound. The sturdy stone walls once again shook. Those white bones in the darkness once again cried out, welcoming the reborn evil demon. Only the evil lich, his figure hidden in the darkness, feeling the invisible but wildly dancing evil demon in front of him, feeling that reborn soul and flowing blood vessels. That feeling was about to engulf him. Bang! A deafening sound, the huge force smashed a huge pit on the hard ground. Jean Pinger flew out, narrowly avoiding this sneak attack from behind, her face uncontrollably pale. Chapter 256. Just now, the stone statue seemed to have some sort of magical power that attracted all of her spirit and soul, causing her to completely forget about everything else. However, when the sound of the wind suddenly rose above her head, the little bit of instinct that she had painstakingly cultivated for many years suddenly woke her up. Almost at the last moment, she rushed out, and luckily managed to escape with her life. Jean Pinger had yet to catch her breath. Suddenly the sound of the wind behind her was intense. That fierce spirit had already caught up. Obviously his body was made up of formless white air, but the huge sword and shield in his hands seemed to be as light as a child's toy. Jean Pinger knew how powerful it was, did not dare to take it head-on. Her body flashed and she hurriedly dodged backwards. With these two strikes, the fierce spirit had already chased Jean Pinger several zhongs away from the subdued devil ancient cave entrance. Once she landed, Jean Pinger's right hand flipped over, purple light rose, the magical weapon purple light blade was already in her hand. Facing this ferocious spirit, she did not dare to let her guard down. Just that although she was on high alert, after that fierce spirit chased her 3 zhongs away from the cave, he did not continue to pursue, his formless body still floating beside that female statue. "Who are you, dare to come to this evil demon land, and dare to profane the shaman goddess's statue?" That fierce spirit stared at her with its huge copper bell eyes, coldly said. Jean Pinger secretly heaved a sigh of relief, composed herself, said clearly, "You have misunderstood, I did not mean to offend this goddess statue, just that when I first saw her, she was really too beautiful, involuntarily used my hands to touch the statue." That evil spirit snorted, his expression slightly calmed down. It was clear that he most likely knew that this stone statue indeed had magical abilities, but his voice was still as cold as before. "Seeing that you are young, and this is the first time, I will not argue with you. This is the land of demons and ghosts. It's not a place for you to come. You'd better leave quickly." Jean Pinger frowned. According to her thoughts, after following the evil shaman for so long, most likely the most important secret was in this subdued devil ancient cave. Unexpectedly there was such a highly skilled fierce spirit guarding the cave entrance. It was really troublesome. Just that if she forced her way in, not to mention the evil shaman or other monsters inside, just this fierce spirit before her was not easy to deal with. While she was pondering, the fierce spirit saw this woman's eyes sweeping back and forth between him and the goddess's statue, at the same time looking at the dark cave behind him from time to time. It was obvious that she was eyeing this cave. He couldn't help but change his expression. "Hey!" That fierce spirit angrily shouted, said, "Little girl, I advise you not to seek trouble for yourself. This cave is filled with exceptional demons. If you go in you will only be seeking death. And I am guarding the ancient cave, I definitely will not let outsiders in. You better give up early." Jean Pinger snorted. How would she give up so easily? Said, "That black-attired man just now, didn't he also enter?" The fierce spirit was stunned. His eyes glinting, said, "So you followed that person here?" Jean Pinger observed his expression, vaguely guessed the relationship between the two, but she still continued, "Of course, that guy who doesn't look like a human doesn't look like a ghost. I am not talking about you, don't be angry." Jean Pinger, who almost spilled the beans, quickly added on to the enraged fierce spirit, and said, "That black-attired man snatched the southern border Miao tribe's sacred weapon Black Staff, right? There is also the Li tribe's sacred weapon Jade Bone. He just went in. I also wanted to see what exactly he wants." She had not finished her sentence. That fierce spirit's countenance had changed greatly, suddenly gave an earth-shattering roar, forcing Jean Pinger's words back, at the same time shocked her till she turned pale. "What did you say? He has the Black Staff and Jade Bone." The fierce spirit's entire body started to tremble violently. Jean Pinger was stunned, said, "Yes." The fierce spirit howled to the sky, extremely sorrowful and indignant, abruptly turned, looking at him. It was as if he was going to rush into the subdued devil ancient cave and perish together with that evil shaman. But at this moment, Jean Pinger and the fierce spirit were both stunned. as if the never-ending wind blowing out from the subdued devil-ancient cave suddenly stopped. Between heaven and earth, it was as if something was missing, especially silent. The fierce spirit's face instantly turned ashen. His mouth opened wide, as if he wanted to say something, and also like he wanted to use all his strength to shout, but no sound came out. Then, he slowly turned around, looked at that female statue. Suddenly, his body shook violently again. His huge body went limp, actually knelt down before the female statue, crying loudly. Jean Pinger was startled. She was from the evil sect, and had seen many strange things in her life, but for such a highly skilled ferocious spirit to suddenly cry loudly in front of her, it was really the first time in her life she had seen it. Just that the fierce spirit was extremely sorrowful. His huge body kept trembling, although it was formed by white air, but that sorrowful emotion seemed to be vividly displayed before her eyes. Jean Pinger quietly moved over. That fierce spirit did not notice her at all. When she moved near that female statue and was about to take the opportunity to sneak into the subdued devil-ancient cave, suddenly her body shook, her eyes looking at that female statue. She was also stunned. On the cold stone statue, that graceful and beautiful lady, 2 streams of tears quietly rolled down from the eyes of the stone statue. So, after hundreds and thousands of years, it still could not erase the deep sorrow. Jean Pinger stood behind the fierce spirit in shock, looking at this sorrowful statue. In the cave behind, a low groan was heard, like something, waking up from a long sleep, uttered its first words. The wind blew again, the sound even more mournful. Even the sky above, the color of the sky, also dimmed. A bolt of lightning pierced through the black clouds. A bolt of thunder exploded in the horizon. Thunder roared in a blink, tearing the sky. Innumerable black clouds, like boiling, surged over from the 10,000 great mountains, gathered above the subdued devil-ancient cave. Above the cave, torrential rain came crashing down, mixed with huge hailstones, causing the ground to be filled with holes. Jean Pinger was shocked, dodged left and right, drifting in the wind and rain. That fierce spirit instead suddenly lifted his head, looked at the sky. All the wind, rain and frost seemed to have no effect on him, but his eyes were filled with despair. Ah! He howled to the sky. In this despairing howl, a strange howl sounded from the subdued devil-ancient cave, from far to near, faster and faster, louder and louder, until it was already deafening. Jean Pinger only felt a roar in her head, as if it was about to split open. Her countenance changed, hurriedly dashed far away. And that fierce spirit suddenly turned around, using his huge body to block the entrance of the cave, raised his shield, crossed his huge sword, his eyes full of anger, without the slightest fear, stood tall. That howl became louder and louder. In a blink it had already rushed to the entrance of the ancient cave. Huge thunders exploded in the horizon, heaven and earth howled, as if the entire 10,000 great mountains were shaking at the same time. In the wind and rain, the fierce spirit looked like a powerless little boat swaying. That deep darkness, like a demonic beast baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, pounced towards him from the ancient cave. The fierce spirit howled angrily, charged forward. The huge sword reflected the lightning streaking across the horizon, slashed towards the darkness. The black gas was instantly sliced in the middle but immediately pounced on both sides, with incomparable speed, drowning his body. The fierce spirit shouted, far away. Jean Pinger could still hear that voice. Lady, the next moment, the fierce spirit disappeared, the black gas like a mountain, desperately gathered at the entrance of the cave, towards the horizon, towards the earth. A red light suddenly flashed in the darkness. A figure, a man wrapped in a brightly colored silk, with his back facing Jean Pinger, slowly descended from the black gas, stood in front of that female statue. Behind him, the black gas howled incessantly, the shadows swayed, as if there were countless demons howling in ecstasy. Only his back figure seemed somewhat strange. Standing in front of the stone statue, in the wind and rain, he stood silently. Slowly, he stretched out his hand, gently caressed that cold stone statue. A low voice quietly reverberated in the wind and rain, traversing thousands of years of time, traversing countless wind, rain, snow, and frost. Ling Long. Chapter 257. 200 miles north of Central Plains, Xian Yong Mountain, was the lofty, majestic Fox Mountain. Looking up from the foot of the mountain, one could see rocks piercing through the air, abrupt and precipitous. Just that on the entire mountain, there was not a single blade of grass or tree, extremely desolate. On the left side of the mountain, spring water emerged from the depths of the mountain, converging into a river, called Victorious Water, flowing towards the northeast. Along the way, the number of tributaries increased. The river gradually became bigger. After 300 miles, it flowed into another large river, Fun Water. Since ancient times, in this river, there was a type of azure precious jade, just that no one had ever seen it before. One of the evil sect 3 big branches, Ghost King sect headquarters, was built in the middle of this hard and heavy rocky mountain. Very few people knew about it. Under Ghost Li's lead, Xiao Bai and the great shaman, after 15 days of trekking, finally reached this place. Because the great shaman's body was really too weak, the three of them plus Xiao Hui had no choice but to walk. Along the way, Ghost Li even hired a carriage for the great shaman to ride. The long and arduous journey made the three of them look weary, just that on the great shaman and Ghost Li, it was a totally different look. Ghost Li's injuries were recovering day by day. Maybe it was because he was young. On the other hand, the great shaman looked worse and worse, compared to when they just left the southern border 7-mile cave 15 days ago. He looked even more frail, not to mention his ashen face. Ever since they entered the mountain path, there were no carriages to ride on, although he had Ghost Li and Xiao Bai to support him. He still panted after every few steps. His stamina was extremely weak. Ghost Li was extremely anxious. Sometimes he could not help but fear. If they had not reached majestic Fox Mountain, if this great shaman who saved his life died halfway, he would really regret it for the rest of his life. Luckily this afternoon, under the warm sunlight, the three of them finally saw that bare peak of majestic Fox Mountain. Stopping, although they had not reached majestic Fox Mountain, Ghost Li heaved a sigh of relief, turned and spoke to the great shaman. "Senior, that barren mountain ahead is where we are going. From here, we just have to walk for a while. By tonight evening, we should be able to reach the foot of the mountain." The great shaman heaved a long sigh, looked up at that mountain, smiled tiredly and said, "Don't worry. Young man, I will not die before I see your sleeping friend." Ghost Li was surprised and then apologetic, quietly said, "Senior, I did not mean to." The great shaman retracted his aged eyes, stretched out his hand and patted his shoulder, smiled and shook his head. "I don't mean anything else. If it was me, I'm afraid I would be even more anxious than you." Ghost Li was silent, smiled and said, "Senior, we have been walking for a long time. Let's rest here for a while. We still have to hurry on." The great shaman looked really tired, nodded his head. With Ghost Li's support, he found a relatively flat rock beside the mountain path and sat down. "Ji." Xiao Hui, who had been lying on Ghost Li's shoulder, called out twice, jumped down and landed on the ground. Along the way, it was Xiao Hui who was the most energetic, and did not show any signs of fatigue. At this moment, the monkey looked around and saw that there were sparse trees on both sides of the road. After calling out twice, it darted in and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Ghost Li glanced at the direction where Xiao Hui had gone but did not mind, turned back and decided to find a rock to sit down and rest. Walking till today, although the serious injuries he suffered in 7-Mile Cave were serious, but they did not affect his muscles and bones and were getting better day by day, just that the wound on his right shoulder was still aching dully. He used his hand to gently caress the wound. Fenxiang Valley Li Sun's figure flashed before his eyes. He coldly snorted in his heart. Just that the next moment, behind Li Sun, there was another graceful figure, clothes as white as snow. Ghostly shook his head, a wave of bewilderment, while pondering. Suddenly Xiao Bai's voice was heard beside him. Why is majestic Fox Mountain so desolate? I have looked for half a day and there is not even a single blade of grass or tree? Ghostly frowned, said, Ever since I came here, it has been like this. Xiao Bai stood beside him, was silent for a moment, shook her head and said, When I left this place, majestic Fox Mountain was full of verdant greenery, lush with vegetation, definitely different from now. Ghostly shook his head and said, That I do not know. Xiao Bai sighed, turned around and did not say anything. Ghostly glanced at Xiao Bai, knew that 1,000 years ago she had been recuperating with the fox tribe here, and had a special feeling towards majestic Fox Mountain, just that he did not know what to say, and with his current state of mind, he did not want to speak too much. As long as he remembered that Bai Yao was in that mountain and maybe tomorrow at this time, she might be able to be reborn. Once he thought of that, Ghostly could not help but feel his blood boiling. He could not think of anything else. The three of them rested for a while, waiting for the great shaman to recover. Ghostly led the two of them and continued forward. Although he said he was leading the way, actually it was only the great shaman alone. Xiao Bai walked in front alone. Her expression was calm and she did not speak. However, she seemed to gradually become familiar with the surrounding road. At the beginning, when they met a few forks in the road, she even asked Ghostly or waited for him to walk on the main road before she followed. Later on, the memories of the past started to awaken in Xiao Bai's heart. Naturally, she became the one leading the way, leading the people behind, walking on the mountain path towards majestic Fox Mountain. The monkey Xiao Hui, who had returned from the forest, a few more wild fruits in its hands, munched on them. Behind Xiao Hui hung a big wine bag. It was stolen from the southern border Miao people. Originally, there were still 2 wine bags, but after drinking intermittently along the way, the monkey's alcohol tolerance had actually increased. After 15 days, he had actually finished a large bag of strong alcohol, and he had not gotten drunk again. Along the way, Xiao Bai saw the monkey dragging the wine bag around. It was really troublesome, so she used a cloth to sew a belt on the wine bag and let Xiao Hui carry it on its back. Now it was good. Xiao Hui was even happier, carried the wine bag and ran around all day. 3 humans and 1 monkey, in the sounds of the monkey eating the wild fruits, each with their own thoughts, quietly walked forward. The sun was setting in the west. The sky also slowly darkened. Just before dusk arrived, they finally reached the foot of majestic Fox Mountain. Almost at the same time, the great shaman and Xiao Bai's bodies shook. The great shaman seemed to feel something, glanced at Xiao Bai who was standing beside him, said in a low voice, "You felt it too?" Xiao Bai frowned slightly. With her 1,000 years of spiritual fox skills, this spiritual power and senses were naturally not to be underestimated, extremely sharp. Almost at the moment when they reached the foot of majestic Fox Mountain, she suddenly sensed in this high mountain, under this seemingly ordinary desolation, indistinctly a thick baleful aura seeped out. The intensity of this baleful aura, even with her high skills, she could not help but feel wary. And after carefully sensing, with her own sharp spiritual power, she sensed that there were 2 other dispirited spiritual powers, although unwilling, but they could only resign to their fate, submitted to the baleful aura. In this mountain, most likely there was a gargantuan secret. Slowly reining in the surprise on her face, Xiao Bai, who turned back to her usual expression, glanced at the great shaman. She did not expect this weary and dying old man would actually have such sharp senses, seemed like southern border shaman arts, indeed had its unique point. She slowly nodded, suppressed her voice and said, "Such a heavy baleful aura." The great shaman was silent for a moment, nodded. Both of them looked at Ghostly at the same time. Ghostly's face also had a strange expression. In his sleeve, the sinister orb on the black soul-absorbing stick suddenly lit up. Blood-red light circulated incessantly, even the sleeves could not hide it. Ghostly slowly took out the soul-absorbing stick, raised it in front of him. At the tip of the stick, the sinister orb's light shone strangely. Circles and circles of bright red light slowly spread out. The blood vessels on the orb, one by one, became clearer, vividly visible. And following his wrist, the sinister orb even sent waves of cold and slightly excited energy throughout his body. Ghost Lee's gaze was deep. He looked up at the tall mountain. A strange glint flashed past his eyes. That was the sign of the sinister orb's extreme thirst for fresh blood. To him, this was something he was already very familiar with. Ghost King personally stood at the entrance of Ghost King sect headquarters, a secret door hidden behind a huge rock waiting to welcome them. It was not difficult to imagine how much importance he placed on the great shaman that Ghostly brought back. After the three of them appeared before them, Ghost King and Ghostly casually nodded their heads, considered as a greeting, and then quickly walked to the great shaman, assessed the great shaman from head to toe. A trace of surprise flashed past their faces, said, "This, master, your body." The great shaman smiled faintly and said, "Old man is a dying man, my fate is as such, today I am only here to do my part. As for whether it will succeed or not, it will depend on heaven's will." Ghost King bowed to the ground, bowed deeply, in a deep voice said, "Master is an otherworldly master, I will not speak too much. The journey is tiring and tonight it is already late. Will master please stay in this cave abode for the night? Make do and rest. Tomorrow I will seek master's advice again." Chapter 258. The great shaman nodded, looking at his expression. He was indeed very tired. Ghost King waved his hand. Someone ran over and helped the great shaman in. The crowd made way. The next moment, the great shaman's figure disappeared into the mountain. Ghost King slowly turned around. Right now, standing in front of him, other than Ghostly, there was also a strangely charming lady behind him. As for the monkey Xiao Hui, its 3 eyes were rolling around, sizing up the people in front of it. Ghost King's eyes paused on Xiao Hui for a moment and then glanced at Xiao Bai behind Ghostly, and finally, back to this young man in front of him. "You are injured?" Ghost King slowly said. Ghostly was silent, only nodded his head. The scene suddenly quietened down. The two men stood facing each other. The atmosphere was strange. It had been 10 years. For the past 10 years, Ghost King had devoted himself to teaching Ghostly, but between the two of them, there seemed to always be an invisible deep ravine. Behind Ghost King stood Qing Long, Yu Ji, and many other disciples. Ghost Li's eyes slowly swept across. He recognized many of the faces, because many of them were the small evil sects that he had annihilated and brought under Ghost King's sect. Right now, the original Blood Forger Hall branch, Nian Leader and the rest, were also standing in the crowd. Only that wild dog Taoist was not among them, not sure if he was still roaming the world with that fortune-teller Zhou Yixian grandfather and grandson? Ghost King's sect's power seemed to be growing stronger. The mountain breeze blew past, not knowing whose clothes were fluttering, whistling. Deep inside the mountain, there seemed to be a black figure, indistinctly swaying. Ghostly looked away, although he could not see clearly, but he knew who that person in the darkness was. Mr. Ghost. This mysterious person seemed to be forever hidden in the darkness, hiding behind Ghost King. "This lady, is she your friend? You brought her back?" Ghost King indifferently asked. His face did not reveal any unusual expression. Ghostly hesitated for a moment, said, "She said she is your old friend and wanted to come back to visit you." Ghost King was surprised. This answer was out of his expectation. He couldn't help but took a few more glances at Xiao Bai, but he couldn't remember when he knew such a lady. He asked in surprise, "This lady, have we met before?" Xiao Bai stepped forward and sighed. She then smiled and said, "How is Xiao Qi? Are you still the same as before, spacing out from time to time and looking at a flower in a daze?" Ghost King's body shook violently. A rare look of shock appeared on his face. He was not the only one. Behind him, Azure Dragon, Yu Qi, and the others who had been following him for a long time, had expressions of disbelief on their faces. Ghost King stared at Xiao Bai after a long while said, "Who exactly are you? How do you know Xiao?" "Xiao Qi." Xiao Bai's eyes drifted, looked past the crowd, looked up, saw in the dusk, majestic Fox Mountain's shadow was tall and desolate, an exceptionally desolate scene. How much time had quietly slipped between the fingers like sand. "Do you remember," she said faintly, "the origin of the name of this mountain?" Ghost King's eyes lit up, his gaze bright, but the surprise on his face was even heavier. Said in shock, "You are Bai." Xiao Bai said indifferently, "I am White Fox." The mountain breeze blew past with a sound, swirling up the light dust on the ground, silently flying into the distance. In the secluded stone room, the furnishings were very simple: tables, chairs, bed, simple furniture. This was the Ghost King sect head's bedroom. The only conspicuous thing should be that red sandalwood table placed against the stone wall, 3 thick stacks of books neatly placed on it, a white jade brush holder on the table, a small brush made of weasel hair placed on it. The ink on the inkstone beside it was still wet. And slightly further away, there was a blue and white brush washer, bright and clear, half a basin of clear water in it. With all these, he gave off a scholarly demeanor, absolutely not the slightest of what the world imagined the evil sect head to look like. Ghost King and Xiao Bai, right now, were standing in this room. Other than them, there was no third person present. On the other side of the stone wall hung a golden painting, in the painting a beautiful lady, carefully examining a blossoming flower, beside the flower a pair of butterflies fluttering. Just that the lady in the painting was so focused, all her attention on that flower, did not seem to notice the butterflies at the side. The painting's brushwork was exquisite. The meticulous slow drawing, unique to the meticulous brushwork style, was vividly displayed by the artist. That lady in the painting almost seemed to come alive, her infatuated expression was even more vivid. Xiao Bai quietly looked at the lady in the painting, after a long time, quietly sighed, said, "Your painting skills are really amazing. To paint Xiao Qi so realistically, seeing the painting, it is like seeing the person." Ghost King, who was standing behind Xiao Bai, right now was also looking at the painting. A tenderness that he had never shown to others surfaced in his eyes. He quietly shook his head, after a moment quietly said, "I only regret not being able to save her." Xiao Bai's eyes did not leave the painting, faintly said, "I never knew, the person whom Ghostly wholeheartedly wanted to save, was you and Xiao Qi's daughter." Ghost King smiled sadly, said, "When Xiao Qi passed away, I could not make it in time to see her for the last time. These few years, every time I think about it, my heart feels like being cut by a knife. Now she did not leave anything, only Baiyao. But she actually also," Xiao Bai indifferently said, "she did not choose the wrong person. Choosing you is her good fortune. I think before she died, she definitely did not have any regret." Ghost King was silent. Xiao Bai stepped forward, stretched out her gentle fingers. Her fingertips gently caressed the lady's delicate and beautiful face. Her eyes gradually glinted, carrying some sorrow, some tenderness. The monkey Xiao Hui, with a strange cry, jumped onto the bed. Returning to Ghost Li's bedroom in majestic Fox Mountain, it did not seem to feel unfamiliar at all, bounced a few times on the bed, suddenly remembered something, stretched its hand to move the wine bag from behind, pulled out the cork and drank another big mouthful of strong liquor. After a pause, the monkey, with a sound of a long breath, squinted its eyes, its face a blissful and satisfied expression. Ghostly stood beside the bed, watching the monkey's expression, was speechless, slowly shook his head, sighed, turned and walked to the door, opened it and walked out, following which he closed the door behind him. The tunnel was deep, extending forward. He unhurriedly walked in this tunnel in the mountain. Along the way, those who saw him would lower their heads in greeting. Just that his face was indifferent, his eyes only looking ahead, as if there was a place that was beckoning him. Walking past the corner, through the tunnel, the Ghost King sect disciple's figure gradually disappeared. When he arrived in front of that familiar cold stone room, He only saw a ghost-like silent figure. Yuji's black veil moved. She turned and looked at Ghostly. Ghostly's eyes swept past her veil, landed on the stone door behind her. The next moment, without any hesitation, he walked over, pushed the door open and entered. The stone door slowly closed behind him. Yuji's figure did not move, stood alone at the door. In the stone chamber, on the cold stone platform, in the rising wisps of white smoke, that beautiful lady was peacefully lying there. The corner of her lips seemed to have a faint smile. Ghostly's back leaned against the stone door. Suddenly, his cold and strong, as if suddenly relaxed, little by little loosened, little by little peeled off. What was left was only a desolate figure, slowly walked up, sat beside her. "I am back, Bai Yao." The light smoke curled up, floated up from the cold stone platform. Looking at Bai Yao's body, it seemed unreal. Her face was that beautiful, her smile was that warm. Could it be, she also knew about this man's return? "You are saved, Bai Yao." His voice deep and slightly trembling. 10 years, a whole 10 years. "I actually let you lie like this for 10 years, I am really useless. You will definitely blame me, right?" "No, it won't. Why would you blame me? At most you will only smile at me, right?" No answer, only wisps of light smoke, slowly gathered and separated before his eyes. "I will definitely save you, Bai Yao. You will definitely wake up," he quietly said. "We will be together, Bai Yao, in this lifetime, we will be together." The deep words along with the light smoke, faintly dispersed, drifted in this stone chamber and then gently dispersed, not leaving a trace. Note 1. Classic of Mountains and Seas, Classic of Mountains 3rd volume, Northern Mountains Classic Majestic Fox Mountain. Another 200 miles north of Xian Yong Mountain, called Majestic Fox Mountain, no vegetation, much verdant. Shingshui emerges and northeast flows into Fenshui, much of which is dark jade. Chapter 259. Fenxiang Valley, Secret Room. The simple and unadorned screen separated the stone room. Shangguansu, dressed in gray, quietly stood at the same spot, patiently waiting. After a long time, Fenxiang Valley Master Yun Elan's aged voice was heard from behind the screen. "I heard, junior brother, this time when you were pursuing the nine-tailed celestial fox, your movements were strange, and at the last moment, you suddenly ordered all the disciples to retreat. Is there such a matter?" Shangguansu's lips revealed a faint cold smile. He himself could guess who Yun Elan's heard was from. In the entire Fenxiang Valley, other than himself, only Yun Elan's most beloved disciple Li Sun could speak to him here. But Shangguansu did not distinguish anything, only unhurriedly said, "That's right." Yun Elan was silent for a moment, said, "If so, as a senior brother I am very puzzled. Will junior brother please enlighten me?" Shangguansu faced the screen, bowed slightly, said, "I dare not. I was pursuing the nine-tailed celestial fox on the way, met someone and so ordered the disciples to immediately turn back and immediately report to senior brother." Yun Elan's voice was clearly surprised, said, "Who is it, to make junior brother so concerned?" Shangguansu unhurriedly spat out 2 words, said, "Shaman demon." Behind the screen, it suddenly became silent. For a long time there was no sound. Shangguansu patiently stood there. Yun Elan's reaction was within his expectations. That day when he saw the shaman demon, the shock in his heart was also no small matter. After an unknown period of time, behind the screen, Yun Elan's calm voice was heard. They, finally, still could not hold it in. From Yun Elan's voice, Shangguansu could not tell what this senior brother was thinking. Was it anxiety, was it shock? He could not tell at all. He stared at the screen and continued, "And one more thing, Yun Elan," and this time he was surprised. Shangguansu inhaled deeply, said, from the shaman demon's hands, took 2 of the 5 tribes' sacred weapons, black staff and jade bone. "What?" Yun Elan could no longer maintain his calm, and blurted out from behind the screen. Shangguansu sneered in his heart, but his expression did not change, said, It should be the evil beast found a Li tribe shaman from somewhere and then taught him the black fire, evil skill, and then used it to incite the Miao and Li tribes to fight, thus snatching the black staff jade bone from the Miao tribe great shaman's hands. After that, the Li tribe shaman wanted to rebel against the demon beasts, but the demon beasts were already prepared and let the evil shaman use the black fire essence pearl to kill him and took back the two sacred weapons. Yun Elon gave a cold snort and said, "There's actually such a reckless fellow." Pausing for a moment, his voice faintly revealed a bit of sternness as he said, "These saint artifacts are of great importance. Why aren't you making a move?" Shang Guansu's expression was indifferent, said, "When I arrived, the black staff jade bone was already in the evil shaman's hands, and he also had the evil dragon with him." Yun Elon fell silent. After a long while he slowly sighed and said, "Heaven's will, heaven's will. Our 100-year plan has been ruined just like that." Shang Guansu did not speak. Qin Yun Hill, Tong Tian Peak. White clouds drifted, celestial air lingered, this place like a paradise on earth. Crane cries, clear and melodious, reverberated in the horizon. The Crystal Hall, that was destroyed in a fierce battle 10 years ago, by now it had already been rebuilt and it looked magnificent, the scale grand, even more so than that year. Dozens of huge red stone pillars propped up the beams, the roof made of yellow glass, under the sunlight, dazzling the eyes, a glorious scene. In the middle of the roof, towering like a pagoda, the jade ring was in the shape of a pagoda. From big to small, from bottom to top, there were 36 levels. The tip was yellow stone, crystal clear. The eaves spread out in all directions, flying out, east, south, west, north. 4 sides were carved with golden dragons playing with pearls, southeast, southwest, northwest, northeast. 4 sides were carved with colorful phoenixes dancing. The golden dragons and colorful phoenixes were holding glass wind chimes in their mouths, fluttering with the wind, making clear sounds, adding some celestial feeling. In the crane cries and wind chimes, Lu Sweki in white unhurriedly walked up the stone steps in front of the crystal hall. From time to time there were a few Qin Yun disciples who were cleaning the stone steps. When they saw Lu Sweki, they all nodded their heads in greeting, among them 1 or 2 youths who had just joined. Their skills were still young. Captivated by Lu Sweki's appearance, after one look, they did not dare to look again, their faces blushed and lowered their heads. Lu Sweki returned the greetings one by one. His face as expressionless as usual, walked towards that towering majestic hall at the end of the stone steps. Behind him, suddenly a loud sound was heard. A dragon-like voice broke the silence here. Lu Sweki did not turn back. That was Qin Yun Sek's guardian spiritual beast, Water Unicorn, again crawled out of the water and went to the shore of the pool to bask in the sun and sleep. Everything here was so peaceful and harmonious. Who would know, there was once a youth who angrily came out from here, threw himself into another dirty and bloody world? Lu Sweki finished walking the long stone steps, silently looked at the tall crystal hall and walked in. Inside the grand hall, light shone in from all directions through the open windows. It seemed especially bright, without the slightest feeling of darkness. Qin Yun sect head, the world's #1 good faction Reverend Daoxian, with a smile on his face, sat upright on the main seat in the main hall. On his right sat another person. It was Lu Sweki's teacher, Qin Yun sect small bamboo valley head Shuiwa master. Lu Sweki was surprised, this time when she returned from the southern border, because she was sent by Reverend Daoxian. She first returned to Tongtian Peak to report to Reverend Daoxian and then planned to return to the mountain to see her teacher Shuiwa master. She did not expect that Shuiwa master was also at Tongtian Peak. And looking at this crystal hall, other than Reverend Daoxian and Shuiwa master, there was no one else, as if both of them were specially waiting for her to return. Seeing Lu Sweki entering the hall, Reverend Daoxian was the first to smile amiably. Shuiwa master beside him although had always been cold but towards her most beloved disciple. Naturally she was different from others, her eyes also revealed a doting expression. Lu Sweki walked up, first bowed to Reverend Daoxian, said, "Greetings, sect head Reverend." Then turned and also bowed to Shui Master, but towards this teacher who was like a mother and daughter, her words were much more casual, said, "Teacher, why are you here too?" Reverend Daoxian smiled and said, "Yesterday I received the news and knew that you are returning today, so I sent someone to inform your teacher. And it just so happens that I have some trivial matters to discuss with your teacher, might as well invite her over." Lu Sueki acknowledged. Shui Master sat at the side, looked at her beautiful disciple. Lu Sueki's snow-white countenance was still as beautiful and expressionless as usual, just that for some reason, she felt that her face was faintly pale. Shui Master's heart was moved, her brows also frowned slightly. Reverend Daoxian did not have Shui Master's many years of experience with Lu Sueki. Right now he did not feel that there was anything wrong with Lu Sueki, only smiled and continued, "Sueki, this time going to the southern border, to visit Funxiang Valley Master Yun Elder Mr. Yun, how is it?" Lu Sueki was silent for a moment, then narrated her experiences in the southern border. Just that in the middle of it, she left out the scene of parting with Ghost Li in Tianshui Stockade. Reverend Daoxian and Shui Master sat there without a word, slowly listening to Lu Sueki's narration. Hearing this, Funxiang Valley Master Yun Elon still did not appear, only Shangguan Su, Li Sun and the rest came out to explain. Both of them looked at each other, a strange expression in their eyes, but did not speak. Later on, listening to Lu Sueki expressionlessly narrating the battle in the southern border Miao tribe's 7-mile cave, Ghost Li appeared and everyone fought fiercely. Reverend Daoxian's face immediately turned cold, while Shui Master seemed to think more, at the same time also knew her own disciples' thoughts, couldn't help but looked at Lu Sueki a few more times. When Lu Sueki was talking about Ghost Li being ambushed by Li Sun and was injured by her celestial sword-wield Thunder True formula, although her tone did not change but her eyes dimmed. Shui Master softly sighed in her heart, closed her eyes. Reverend Daoxian waited until Lu Sueki finished, stood next to Shui Master, looked at Shui Master, snorted coldly, said, "Zhang Xiaofan, that vile spawn, 10 years ago we did not get rid of him, now we have really nurtured a tiger only to invite calamity." Shui Master opened her eyes, intentionally or unintentionally glanced at Lu Sueki, lightly said, "This is all fate, cannot be forced." Lu Sueki's face seemed to turn paler. Reverend Daoxian pondered for a moment, said, "From what Shui Master just said, in these 10 years, this person's cultivation seems to have improved greatly." Shui Master slowly nodded, said, "Zhang Xiaofan can instantly use Sinister Orb's evil power to suck the blood of dozens of Li tribe warriors and after being injured by Li Sun, immediately counterattacked. Even Funxiang Valley's famous Pure Yang Jade ruler could not withstand. This cultivation is already no longer." She looked at Lu Sueki, said, "Is already not below Chiur and your disciple Shao Ikai." Lu Sueki was expressionless, but Reverend Daoxian slowly shook his head. Shui Master startled said, "Why, Shi Xiang think I saw wrongly?" Reverend Daoxian sighed, said, "That evildoer was ambushed by Li Sun, and was injured by Thunderblade True Incantation. Not only did he not die on the spot, instead he could fly up and counterattack. I guess he used Skysong Temple's True Incantation, Great Brahman Wisdom, to resist the power of Thunderblade True Incantation, then used our faction's Tai Chi Xian Qing Dao to break Celestial Sword True Incantation's incantation formation. After he got near to Sueki, Sueki said this person's eyes were blood red, Sinister Orb glowed brightly. He must have used Sinister Orb's evil power to control Sueki. From this we can say that he has combined 3 true incantations. His cultivation is high, most likely already surpassed our faction's disciples." He looked at Lu Sueki, said, "But at that time, most likely he was exhausted, like an arrow at the end of its flight, so he could not harm Sueki anymore, or else Sueki's celestial sword True Incantation would be broken. It would be like having no power to counterattack. It would be extremely dangerous." Sweki, this person seems to have combined Buddhism, Taoism, demon, 3 great incantations. His cultivation is strange and unpredictable. If you meet this person in the future, you must be careful. Chapter 260. Ainan's lips moved, her fingers holding Aeolian firmaments tightened and loosened, quietly said, "Yes." Master Shueyu looked at her, sighed in her heart, suddenly said, "Cheer, you must be tired, go back and rest first. I still have something to discuss with your sect head Sherbwa, I will also go back later." Ainan answered, looked at Master Doyelshin. Master Doyelshin shook his head, smiled. "Look at my memory, really muddle-headed. Shueqi, there is nothing here, you go back to Bamboo Height and have a good rest." Ainan walked out, first saluted to Master Doyelshin, then said to Master Shueyu, "Master, I will go back first." Master Shueyu nodded, said, "You go." Ainan lowered her head and slowly left. After a moment, she disappeared from Master Doyelshin and Master Shueyu's sight. Master Doyelshin pondered for a moment, sighed, "What a Sha Danan! Alas, such a pity." Master Shueyu said lightly, "That child became like this, we cannot get away from it." Master Doyelshin frowned, his face darkened, said, "Shueyu Shimmy, what do you mean?" Master Shueyu's face was indifferent, but her tone did not change at all, said, "Nothing, Sha Danan abandoned the light and went to the dark, we are also in the wrong." Master Doyelshin said, "Could it be that Shueyu Shimmy thinks what I did was wrong?" Shueyu looked at Master Doyelshin, saw his face was rarely serious, sighed, said slowly, "Shixiang, don't think too much. If it were me, I would also do the same as you. I just said, Sha Danan is fate, it is heaven's will." Master Doyelshin was silent for a moment, his face gradually relaxed, but in the hall, the atmosphere seemed to be a little awkward. After a moment, Master Doyelshin slowly said, "You also heard it, Shueqi still did not see Yun Elan. Yun Valley Master, what do you think?" Master Shueyu snorted, said, "Yun Elan, that old man, always mysterious, don't know what he is going to do this time. However, his cultivation couldn't be underestimated. There shouldn't be anyone in the southern border who could harm him, so we don't have to worry too much." But Reverend Daoxian was stunned, said, "What?" Shueyu Master looked at Reverend Daoxian, said, "This time you did not send the other disciples, and only sent Chi'er alone to southern border Fenxiang Valley, and you did not even discuss with me beforehand." After speaking, her face suddenly turned cold, sneered twice. Reverend Daoxian frowned, said, "Junior sister, the reason behind it, I told you later on, didn't you not object?" Shueyu Master stood up, faintly said, "Although I do not object, but my disciple's character has always been unyielding and persistent, you know it, it is better to have some leeway in everything." After speaking, without waiting for Reverend Daoxian to speak, he walked out of the main hall. Daoxian looked at her back view, suddenly shook his head, gave a long sigh. Majestic Fox Mountain. Icy Stone Chamber. Ghost King sect from Ghost King down, Qing Long, Yuji etc. were all standing in the chamber. Beside them were Ghost Li and Xiao Bai. In the most secluded corner, Mr. Ghost in Black stood alone. Just that right now, no one had the mind to notice that dark figure. Everyone's attention was anxiously watching the great shaman standing beside Bai Yao's icy stone platform. Ghost Li unconsciously quietly clenched his fists on this occasion. He did not let Xiao Hui follow along. Looking at the great shaman's aged figure and Bai Yao's face in the white gas and light smoke, his already steel-like will also started to tremble slightly. 10 years of yearning, a nightmare that constantly haunted his heart, this hope, right now was right before his eyes. The great shaman's body swayed slightly, the crowd behind him were moved, Ghostly could not help but step up. Even Ghost King, who had always been extremely calm, his eyes also twitched. The great shaman turned his head, smiled at the crowd, indicating that he was fine. The crowd then felt assured. Just that after a night's rest, the great shaman they saw today, did not look much better than yesterday, instead seemed to have signs of waning. Every wrinkle on his aged face was deeply engraved, as if squeezing out his remaining life force. In the stone chamber, only the great shaman's gradually heavy panting could be heard. Ghost King and Ghostly, who was standing beside, looked at each other. Both saw the indistinct anxiety in each other's eyes. Suddenly, the great shaman shakily stretched out his hand, pointing at that direction. It was that He-Huan bell that Bai Yao was holding. The golden bell stood erect in the fair hands, glimmering with gentle light. On the bell body, slowly reflected that aged hand that was getting closer. The next moment, the withered hand touched the He-Huan bell. Everyone in the cold stone chamber held their breaths. From the great shaman's fingertips, faint blue light slowly lit up, gradually brightening. Just that, following the incessant flickering of this light, the great shaman's face also became even more lifeless, like dead ash. As if it heard something calling, suddenly, the He-Huan bell, which had been silent for 10 years, suddenly made a clear ringing sound, gently reverberated. Ghost King and Ghostly immediately looked agitated. Both of them could not help but stepped forward at the same time. Just that, after a moment they realized at the same time, and then controlled themselves, but their eyes were already staring intently at the great shaman's fingers. After that clear ringing, a layer of golden light slowly surfaced on the He-Huan lingling. Although it was not bright, but almost at the same time, the great shaman's face suddenly revealed a strenuous expression. In the next moment, the cold air in the cold stone chamber suddenly intensified. Everyone's countenance changed at the same time. To be able to stand here, which one of them was an expert in cultivation, almost subconsciously, Ghost King and Ghostly as well as Xiao Bai floated up. But just as the cold air instantly expanded, the gentle golden light on the He-Huan bell in a blink turned blazing, almost like a tangible fire. With a sound, swiftly spread out in all directions in the stone chamber. The great shaman was the first to bear the brunt. His body was originally weak. Immediately his entire body was thrown into the air by this blazing light. A mouthful of blood spurted out. Ghost King's figure, like an apparition, instantly appeared beside the great shaman, caught his body. Ghostly at the same time appeared in front of him. The soul-devouring stick appeared in the air. A dark green halo of light appeared in a blink, blocked that earth-shattering golden bell blazing light. And Xiao Bai's white figure instead appeared beside the cold stone platform, raised her hand. A white light slowly descended, enveloping the He-Huan bell in it. The next moment, the trembling He-Huan bell slowly calmed down. That golden light also gradually disappeared. The temperature in the stone chamber also returned to normal. Everyone looked at the great shaman, who was being supported by Ghost King. After that blow, the great shaman's 7 apertures were bleeding. Anyone could tell that this old man was already on the verge of death, with only a little energy left. Amidst the silence, everyone looked at each other in dismay and were stunned speechless. Until a panting moan broke the dead silence. The great shaman slowly opened his eyes, struggled to stand up. Ghost King was moved, stretched out his hand to help, but the great shaman instead slowly shook his head. Ghost King silently nodded. A trace of admiration flashed past his eyes. He slowly retracted his hand. The great shaman panted for a moment, lifted his sleeve, slowly wiped the blood from his mouth, opened his mouth to speak. Just that his voice was extremely hoarse. This lady's remnant soul is indeed in this He-Huan bell. Everyone was silent. The great shaman inhaled deeply, said, "Just that this He-Huan bell is a rare treasure. The spiritual power it contains is equivalent to forming a sturdy formation, although this is the only way to protect Miss Soul, but if outsiders want to take it out, they will have to break this He-Huan bell." Speaking till here, his body suddenly swayed. The mouth that had just wiped the blood from, another mouthful of blood spurted out. Ghostly dashed forward a few steps, supported this old man in his arms. His lips moved, finally could not help but said, "Senior, you better take a rest first." The great shaman glanced at this young man, smiled faintly, suddenly suppressed his voice and said, "Don't forget that day in the 7-mile cave, what you promised me." Ghostly was surprised, nodded and said, "Senior, don't worry." The great shaman heaved a long sigh, slowly pushed Ghostly away, turned and spoke to Ghost King and the rest. "The plan now, to break the Hehuan Bell's spiritual power and without harming Miss Soul, I can only set up the Southern Border Witchcraft Soul Beckoning Guide formation, see if I can lure Miss Soul out of the bell." Cough, cough, cough. A bout of violent coughing interrupted his words. Everyone looked at each other speechlessly. Anyone could tell that this old man was like a dried up oil lamp, to set up this whatever soul beckoning guide. They really did not know if he could last till then. Ghost King clenched his teeth, stepped forward, cupped his fists and said to the great shaman, "Master has done your best for my daughter, I am extremely grateful. Master need not worry about other matters, just focus on casting the spell. No matter what the result is, Ghost King's sect will definitely not disappoint Master." The great shaman slowly nodded, a comforting look in his eyes, panted for a moment, quietly said, "Soul Beckoning Guide is an evil spell, it is not suitable to have too many people here. Will Ghostly Gongzi and sect head please stay and help, the rest of you please leave for the time being." Ghostly and Ghost King nodded at the same time, the rest of them did not wait for them to speak. One after another left. After a while, only the great shaman, Ghost King and Ghostly were left in the cold stone chamber. The great shaman's face was pale, his body slowly trembling, but he could no longer stand. His body softened and slowly sat down on the ground. Chapter 261. In the cold stone chamber, only the great shaman's deep panting could be heard. Ghost King and Ghostly stood before this frail old man, staring intently at his aged face. Right now, the great shaman's remaining life was their only hope. The great shaman calmed down, raised his head, smiled at the both of them. Ghost King and Ghostly then felt slightly relieved. The great shaman pondered for a moment, spoke to Ghost King, "Will sect head please find some blood? Soul summoning lure, evil arts, blood is the best." Ghostly frowned slightly. Ghost King already nodded and said, "That's easy." He was about to leave after speaking, suddenly thought of something, stopped and asked the great shaman, "Master, this blood. Do you want beast blood or human blood?" The great shaman was stunned, glanced at Ghost King again but still said, "Beast blood is also fine, but in terms of effect, human blood is the best." Ghost King nodded, strided to the door, opened it. Qing Long, Yuji were standing outside. Mr. Ghost in Black also stood slightly further away. Seeing Ghost King suddenly coming out, Qing Long, Yuji's faces were slightly shocked at the same time, but Ghost King did not look at them, directly spoke to Mr. Ghost, "Bring a basin of fresh human blood." Qing Long and Yuji were stunned. Mr. Ghost only nodded, turned and left. Ghost King also turned back. Only Qing Long and Yuji, whose faces gradually darkened, stood where they were. In the cold stone chamber, for some reason, the atmosphere suddenly turned strange. Ghostly quietly watched Baiyao, who was lying there, after a long time, turned and looked at the great shaman who was resting, and then his eyes landed on Ghost King. Ghost King seemed to not feel anything, his expression calm and composed, a pair of eyes only watching Baiyao, occasionally glanced at Ghostly, but it was only a quick glance, did not linger at all. On the stone door, two sounds were suddenly heard, and then it slowly opened. Mr. Ghost carried a copper basin in, placed it before the great shaman, and then nodded to Ghost King. Ghost King slightly nodded. Mr. Ghost did not say anything and quietly retreated. Bright red blood swayed gently in the copper basin. A strong smell of blood permeated the stone chamber. Ghostly's eyes twitched slightly, looked deeply at Ghost King. Ghost King instead unhurriedly spoke to the great shaman, "Master, the blood you wanted is here." The great shaman opened his eyes, looked at the basin of blood in front of him, was silent, after a long while suddenly sighed, said, "All right, let us begin." Supporting his weak body, the Grand Wizard slowly stood up, but before he could straighten his body, it was already swaying. Ghostly rushed forward and supported him from the side. The great shaman glanced at him, laughed bitterly but did not delay any further. The frail old man slowly reached into his bosom and fumbled around for a moment. When he reached out, there was a strange red pen in his hand. The body of the pen was roughly the thickness of a thumb and the length of a normal person's palm. The end of the brush was in the shape of a dog's head. It was unknown what the red brush was made of, but it was engraved with all kinds of strange runes. At the tip of the brush, a tuft of fine hairs was evenly embedded. Its original color could not be seen, only a remnant of dark red on it. Without asking what this brush was stained with in the past, most likely most of it was blood and the like. Holding the brush, inhaled deeply, the great shaman, with Ghost Lee's support, lowered his body, soaked the red brush in the blood for a moment and then lifted it up. Blood from the fine hairs at the tip of the brush, drop by drop silently dripped into the copper basin, creating small ripples on the surface of the blood, rippling out. Holding the brush, the great shaman slowly walked with Ghost Lee's support to the cold stone platform where Baiyu was lying. From the point where the platform and the ground were connected, slowly drew the first stroke. The bright color gradually extended on the originally flat ground. The old man's slightly trembling hands drew one after another blood talisman. The surroundings were silent, but for some reason, the atmosphere seemed to be gradually tensing up. Ghost King watched for a while, quietly walked to the copper basin, carried it up, walked a few steps and placed it beside the great shaman. The great shaman who was drawing raised his head and glanced at him, quietly nodded and then lowered his head again and continued. More and more blood strokes, with Biyu's cold stone platform as the center, gradually appeared around her. A strange and bloody formation had already appeared. The great shaman's red brush was obviously also a unique southern border witchcraft. The blood that was sucked by the red brush, drawn on the ground by the great shaman, the blood actually congealed and did not dry, the color fresh and glossy, and at the corners and corners, not a single trace of blood spilled out, like a prison, firmly encircled the blood within. Following the great shaman's panting sounds again, and gradually getting heavier, the blood drawings on the ground also gradually became complicated. These strange drawings, some looked like domestic animals, some like big birds and some completely unrecognizable drawings, one after another appeared, and not a single one was the same. The only thing they had in common was that these patterns were all interconnected. More and more blood was drawn on the ground from the copper basin, but the color of the blood that fell on the ground seemed to be even brighter than the blood that had been in the copper basin. The bloody stench in the air became thicker in the stone chamber. Other than the great shaman's panting sounds, there was no other sound. These blood drawings, starting from the stone platform on Biyu's left shoulder, the great shaman concentrated on drawing stroke by stroke. Ghost Lee supported him, saw with his own eyes this fresh blood color from nothing, from less to more, gradually converging into a 5 chi radius oval ring. Right now, other than a small piece of ground near Biyu's head, Bailu's surroundings had already become blood color. Ghost King again lifted the copper basin, placed it on the ground above the stone platform, and then slowly walked to the side. This strange formation was almost completed. Countless connected together, big or small strange drawings, glimmered with blood-colored light. At first glance, it looked like a stretch of crisscrossing rivers, the fresh red lively blood like in the blood vessels, happily swimming. From one side to another, from the end back, like a gentle tide, growing and multiplying without end. The crisscrossing bright red, gradually converged on the ground below. The great shaman's hand, without knowing when, seemed to be trembling and unable to hold that red brush. Ghost Lee, who was supporting the old man, could clearly feel the pain from the old man's body. Even he himself could not understand what was the reason for this body to be able to persevere till now. The heavy panting sounds had already turned hoarse. The great shaman's forehead was wet, but there was no more sweat to flow. He slowly stretched out his hand, dipped the red brush full of blood and drew the last stroke, the last completed drawing, connected with the first blood drawing together. Pooh! A deep sound, the red brush powerlessly fell to the side, the weight in Ghost Lee's arms suddenly became heavy, the great shaman's body just like that slumped down. Ghost Lee's heart jumped, a sound in his head uncontrollably, even his back instantly felt the fear of needles piercing into his bones. He held his breath, exerted more strength to support the great shaman, looked down. The great shaman's face was ashen but his mouth was slightly agape, still panting, evidently due to overexertion. Ghostly then calmed down and at the same time realized, in that moment just now, his forehead and back were also wet. Beside him, almost at the same time, Ghost King's long exhalation was heard, evidently he was also shocked. Right now, these two men who looked down upon the world were actually trembling with fear because of this dying old man's actions. The great shaman panted for a long time, seemed to have recovered slightly, nodded to Ghostly, signaling him to sit down. Ghostly was perturbed, looking at the great shaman. He was really afraid that this old man would die if he was not careful, just that right now no matter how worried he was, he could only follow the great shaman's instructions, helped him to sit down, right at the top of the Bai Yao stone platform. The great shaman breathed deeply, looked ahead. In front of him was a blood formation that was already completely connected, the blood-colored passageways all over the ground, imprisoning countless amounts of blood in it. And those fresh blood seemed to be affected by an invisible force, on the flat ground, almost at the same time started to flow towards the same direction. In between, there was not a trace of separation from the bloodline-like brush marks. From one end to the other, and then from the connected passageways back, forming a cycle, growing and multiplying, circulating without end. Ghostly and Ghost King, who were standing behind the great shaman, looked at each other. Both of them were great experts in the cultivation world. Right now their eyes were filled with astonishment. The great shaman was silent for a moment, stretched out his withered hand, picked up the red brush that had fallen beside him, held it vertically in front of him. The red fine hairs at the tip pointed downwards. On the red brush, there were still remnant blood droplets, condensed into beads. After struggling on the fine hairs for a moment, silently fell, merged into that blood river in front of him. Chapter 262. The great shaman stared intently, the heavy panting sounds suddenly quietened down, the stone chamber, suddenly quietened down. He slowly raised his eyebrows, and his originally lifeless eyes actually began to light up. The blood in the array in front of him seemed to be stimulated by something, and the speed at which it flowed suddenly increased. The hand holding the red pen slowly landed. Very soon it touched the ground, just 3 inches away from the outermost blood river. The slender red hair touched the ground, but it did not bend. The entire ground suddenly seemed to become soft water, and this red pen slowly and silently inserted itself into the ground. The atmosphere in the stone chamber slowly turned strange, following the faster and faster blood river, gradually emitted indistinct whistling sounds. Faint blood energy followed that red pen into the ground, gradually rose from the formation, and then merged with the faint white energy emitted from the cold stone platform, enveloped Bai Yao in it. Ghost King and Ghost Lee's eyes did not even blink, stared intently at the scene. The great shaman released the red pen in his hand. A deep incantation voice started to reverberate in the stone chamber. The great shaman's cracked lips, lightly but frequently spat out one after another strange incantation. His hands, as if following an inexplicable melody, slowly stretched to the air, 5 fingers forming claws, gently waved. The whistling sound in the stone chamber grew louder and louder. On the ground, the river of blood in the spell formation was already surging violently. Each wave was higher than the last, and waves of ghostly power came from the river of blood. Suddenly, the great shaman spat out a sharp whistle. His 5 fingers like claws clawed down, a sound into the blood river. Almost at the same time, Ghost King and Ghostly who were standing behind him were at a loss. In that instant they felt that the stone chamber did not exist anymore. The four walls, the stone floor, suddenly became empty, like they were in the summer void, vast beyond the sky, eerie, dark. There was nothing to rely on. Ghost cries were heard abruptly, swarming in from all directions. Brilliant red light burst out from the red blood formation, charged up to the sky. In the swaying red light, countless of spirits panicked, like being sucked here by an invisible force, involuntarily, scurried everywhere, but no matter what they could not escape from that red light screen. And at this moment, the stone chamber resumed its original appearance. Ghostly and Ghost King's senses immediately woke up. The two of them were shocked in their hearts, as they knew that at that instant earlier, this soul-beckoning lure formation actually disregarded the surrounding stone walls and the belly of the mountain as nothing, and used the mysterious shaman power of the southern border to forcefully connect the nine nether ghost world to capture innumerable spirits and ghosts and confine them within this formation. Just that this formation was so mystical, naturally it consumed a lot of vitality. Looking through the red light, the great shaman's expression was already so bad that it could not get any worse. If one said that right now he was a dead man, most likely someone would also believe it. Ghost King and Ghost King's heartbeat uncontrollably sped up, secretly prayed that this great shaman must hold on. At the same time both of their eyes stared unwaveringly at that formation. In the field, numerous spirits and spirits howled and leaped and danced in the red light. There were ordinary spirits. There were also strange-looking mountain spirits and huge beasts. After a while, those spirits that were repelled by the red light probably knew that they could not escape. One by one turned their heads and howled at the great shaman sitting in front of the formation. The great shaman did not look at those angry spirits. A pair of eyes slowly lifted, focused on the stone platform shrouded in red light, on the Hehuan bell in Bailu's hand. Both of his arms suddenly waved, left hand like a claw, right hand 5 fingers instead changed, ring finger, little finger bent inwards 3 degrees, middle finger, index finger like a sword, thumb pointing to the sky. It was the shaman incantation, pointing in the air. Hehuan bell rang. Ding. The clear ringing, like an oriole in the deep valley, chirping in the morning, that Hehuan bell actually left Bailu's hand, slowly rose to the air. Faint golden light, again emitted from the bell. Almost at the same time when the great shaman pointed at Hehuan bell, the numerous spirits and spirits in the soul-summoning blood formation seemed to be urged by an invisible force. Although angry and howling, unwilling but like tidewater, they all pounced towards the golden Hehuan bell in the air. In that instant, the ghostly energy surged. Hehuan bell trembled violently. Ghostly evil powers surged in from all directions, repeatedly attacking. Countless spirits and spirits swarmed over, biting the bell, ferociously striking. The scene was a frenzied one. And under this scene, the red blood sea in the formation, the red light became brighter, the blood howled, almost boiling. As if unable to withstand the eerie ghostly powers, Hehuan bell's faint golden light gradually dimmed, submerged in the innumerable spirits. After a moment, a sharp sound, above the Hehuan bell, a light smoke slowly formed, indistinctly discernible, intermittent and continuous, floating on the Hehuan bell, just that the latter half seemed to still be in Hehuan bell. The great shaman's face, for some reason, suddenly turned slightly rosy again. Compared to before, it looked much better. Even the arm that was waving seemed to have more strength. A trace of joy flashed past his old face. His mouth loudly shouted, "Duo! Remnant soul out of body, 9 souls return. Netherworld 9 nether, summoning souls to lead." These 4 incantations, the great shaman's voice was full of vigor, awe-inspiring. Following his voice, the red light dispersed with a loud bang, in that instant covered the entire stone chamber. Ghost King and Ghostly felt another wave of rumbling, that empty, eerie, as if they were in the 9 nether world again appeared. The only difference was, right now the surroundings were filled with ghostly cries. There were actually innumerable spirits and spirits flying in all directions. Boom! It was as if it didn't stop for even a moment. It was like a bolt of lightning piercing through the sky, unstoppable. Before the two of them could regain their senses, the scene around them changed back to the stone room. In the red demonic screen, countless ghosts danced in the air. The light smoke on the joyous Union Bell was surrounded by countless ghosts, and wisps of smoke slowly appeared. 1, 2, 3. 8, 9. 3 souls and 7 physical forms. It was the soul. Ghost Lee's body trembled. His fingernails dug deep into his flesh, blood flowed down, but he was completely unaware. Within that red curtain of light, there were wisps of light smoke. He turned his head and looked at the great shaman. Just a moment of time would be enough. He could not help but roared in his heart. The great shaman's face was also flushed, suddenly, like the tide receded. The deep wrinkles around the corners of his eyes started to twitch. That pair of withered hands waving in the air again started to tremble. Only his voice was still that loud and clear. 3 souls and 7 physical forms, gather spirits to become gods, unite deities to search spirits, become one. Following his words, the 9 light smoke that appeared successively in the air flew out from the crowd of spirits, and spirits slowly approached Hehuan Bell, gradually merged with that light smoke on Hehuan Bell. Indistinctly, a human figure gradually appeared. Right now, not only Ghostly, even Ghost King could not help but tremble, his face filled with excitement. The great shaman's face had turned pale again. His hands also trembled even more violently in the red light. He opened his mouth and loudly said, "The soul is formed, all spirits return to their positions. Spirit soul enter." The word body that was left in his throat, at that moment when it was about to come out, the great shaman's voice, suddenly turned hoarse. What was emitted was only a subtle deep sound. Ghost King and Ghost Lee's countenances changed greatly at the same time. The red light in the soul summoning spell formation shook violently. Suddenly, a loud bang erupted. The red light scattered, and countless ghosts suddenly soared into the sky. One by one, they sank into the stone wall and disappeared without a trace. Just that Ghost King and Ghostly could not be bothered with that. Through the chaotic images, both of them looked straight at the great shaman. That elder, his hands were still raised in the air, but his head slowly drooped down. Ghostly and Ghost King, like lightning, dashed to the great shaman, supported his body, but the great shaman's head still slowly but unstoppably drooped down. Just that in his mouth, it seemed like he was still struggling to say something. Ghost King and Ghostly tried their best to get close to the great shaman. In that already muffled voice, they could only indistinctly hear a few intermittent words. Woo, nine nether. Woo woo. Extreme een. Woo. Not. This, that voice gradually became quiet. The old man's head finally drooped down on his chest. There was no more news. The bone-chilling coldness, like being in the deep underworld ice prison, the two wooden-faced men could not believe what they were seeing. The dissipating red light gradually disappeared, the raging blood river quietened down, the blood stains that had lost their power could no longer restrain the blood, fresh human blood flowed all over the ground. The light smoke on Hehuan Bell, like a whale sucking in water, was sucked back, disappeared into the bell. The faint golden light again floated up, making the Hehuan Bell especially dazzling. A gentle swaying, accompanied by a clear ringing, Hehuan Bell slowly descended, returned to lying on the cold stone platform, in Bai Yao's hands, quiet as before. A deathly silence pervaded the cold stone chamber, did not disperse for a long time, not a single sound. Chapter 263. Majestic Fox Mountain, Ghost King Sect Headquarters. It had been 3 days since the great shaman passed away. Qing Long ordered people to cremate the old man's body and kept it in an urn. Right now, this small blue and white urn was quietly placed on the table beside him. Qing Long stared at the urn for a long time, sighed softly and looked away. These 3 days, Ghost King sex affairs, big or small, were all handled by Qinglong and Yuji. After that incident 3 days ago, Ghost King and Ghostly both actually shrunk into their own rooms and had not come out till now. Azure Dragon could still clearly remember that 3 days ago, when the heavy stone door slowly opened with a creaking sound, the two men who walked out from inside, the two men who were almost fearless in the entire world, actually looked as if they had lost their souls, their expressions absent-minded and sorrowful. Ghost King was still fine, quietly said, "Within 3 days, no one is to disturb me." After speaking, he walked straight back to his room and never came out again. As for that Ghostly, he seemed to have lost his soul, did not speak a word, walked and walked, directly hit the hard stone wall, causing blood to flow down from his forehead. As for him, it was as if he didn't notice anything. He slowly turned around and walked back to his own room, stumbling a little. The crowd who were stunned by the strange scene, most of them had already guessed the result, but when they looked into the stone door, the ground was covered with blood, and the great shaman sitting upright in the pool of blood with his head hanging down, that tragic scene, was really a ghastly sight. Only Baiyao, who was still lying on the cold stone platform, her serene and lifelike face, was still as tranquil as usual, and the Hehuan bell in her hand was emitting faint golden light. Footsteps sounded from the side, interrupting Qinglong's thoughts. He looked up and saw Yuji's figure drifting in like a ghost, standing beside him, but she did not look at him directly and instead glanced at the room behind him, quietly said, "Sect head has not come out yet?" Qinglong slowly shook his head, quietly said, 3 days, no news at all." Yuji's black veil moved slightly, did not speak. Although they didn't see it with their own eyes, the two of them could completely imagine the sadness of the scene. In this world, if there was anything more heartbreaking than despair, it would be seeing hope. Even when that hope was right in front of you, you fell into despair. Just when the two of them were speechless, suddenly, from the door behind Qinglong, a light sound was heard. The door slowly opened. Azure Dragon and Yuchi's bodies shook, and they quickly turned around to look. The simple wooden door slowly opened inwards, emitting a low and light creaking sound. It carried with it the vicissitudes of the past, perhaps also narrating the owner's sorrow. A foot stepped out of the room. The Ghost King's figure slowly appeared before them. Qinglong and Yuji silently looked at the man who seemed to be in another world. Chapter 264. Ghost King's hair had actually all turned snow-white. Qinglong's voice for some reason suddenly became hoarse and hesitant. Even when he heard it, he also doubted if it was actually his own voice. "Sect head, are you still well?" "Well?" Ghost King's lips moved but did not speak. Instead he closed his eyes, raised his head slightly and breathed deeply. Yuji, under the black veil, suddenly said, "Sect head, you must take care of yourself. Your body." Speaking till the end, for some reason, she suddenly thought of Baiyao, her voice choked. Ghost King's shoulders trembled slightly but very quickly calmed down when he opened his eyes again, although the vicissitudes and desolation were still etched on his face, but in his eyes, there was already a faint light. That gaze seemed to have seen through the vicissitudes of the world. "I look like I've aged a lot." He actually said that. The corners of his lips moved slightly, a slight smile, but in it was full of bitterness. Qinglong and Yuji lowered their heads at the same time, could not bear to look at this man. Ghost King again took a deep breath, exhaled the air in his chest. His eyes turned and after a moment, landed on the table beside Qinglong's hand, on that small blue and white urn. "What is inside is?" he indifferently asked. Qinglong took a step forward, carried the small urn and passed it to Ghost King, said, "After the great shaman passed away, Subordinate made the bold decision to cremate the old man's body. What is in this small urn is his ashes relic." Ghost King silently took over the small blue and white urn, both of his hands caressed it for a long time, gently sighed and said, Although this master did not manage to save Yao, but in his dying body, disregarded everything and exhausted his vitality, collected Yao's soul, although in the end he failed at the last moment, but he is still our great benefactor. He once again passed the urn back to Qing Long, said, "Get ready, with our holy sect's heavy gifts, respectfully send the master back to southern border." Qing Long received the small blue and white urn, nodded and said, "Yes." Ghost King was silent for a moment, said, "Ghostly, how is he?" Qing Long hesitated for a moment. Yuji had already said, after coming out from the cold stone room, he seemed to have collapsed, lost his soul, stumbled back to his room, and never came out again. Speaking till here, she paused, quietly said, "Until today, it has been 3 days." Ghost King's face was bleak, slowly put his hands behind his back, after a long while quietly recited, 10 years of heartache, 1 night in my heart. Sigh, let's go and see him." After saying that, he slowly walked away with his hands clasped behind his back. Qing Long and Yuji looked at each other and silently followed behind him. Looking from behind, Ghost King had a head of white hair. His figure was strangely desolate. Ghost Li's room was quite far from Ghost King's room, but very close to Bailu's room. This was because Ghost King was not willing to be sadder and so left his daughter's room, and if Ghostly was in majestic Fox Mountain, he would visit Bailu almost every day. When the 3 of them passed through the tunnel and gradually neared Ghost Li's room, Qing Long and Yuji, who were walking behind, clearly discovered something strange with Ghost King's body, not knowing if it was because this place was close to that heartache place again. But both of them did not say a word. Finally, they came to the lonely stone door, Ghost Li's room. There was no one around. He had always liked to be alone. Just that outside his door, far away, stood a Ghost King sect disciple. Ghost King walked up, opened the door and walked in, then was stunned. Qing Long and Yuji also felt something was wrong, walked in and saw the room was empty. Not only Ghostly was nowhere to be seen, even Xiao Hui was nowhere to be seen. The furnishings in the room were as usual, not a single trace of being used. Only that bed looked messy. Qing Long frowned, turned and called out. That Ghost King sect disciple hurriedly ran in, knelt down in front of Ghost King and saluted. "Greetings, sect head." Ghost King turned and looked. Qing Long beside him softly said, "Other than handling the sect affairs these few days, subordinate has been waiting outside sect head's door. As for this place, let these disciples guard it well." Ghost King nodded slightly, turned and spoke to that disciple. "Where is Vice Sect Head?" That Ghost King sect disciple was obviously in awe of Ghost King, even his voice was slightly trembling, said, Reporting to Sect Head. Vice Sect Head had shut himself in the room for 3 days and 3 nights, there was no movement at all. Just as I was worrying, this morning, he suddenly walked out with that gray-furred monkey and left this place." Ghost King was stunned. Qing Long frowned and said, "Where did he go?" That disciple lowered his head and said, "Disciple had been following Vice Sect Head, saw him walking out of the mountain, and then flew away. Disciple saw his expression and appearance, it was very scary. Disciple did not dare to go up to ask and could only come back here to wait." Anger flashed across Qing Long's face. Ghost King suddenly exclaimed, walked a few steps forward, picked up a sealed letter from the bedside, took a look and passed it to Qing Long, said, "It's for you." Qing Long was stunned, took a look, it was indeed written for him, puzzled, glanced at Ghost King. But Ghost King was expressionless, looking elsewhere. Qing Long frowned, tore open the seal and read the letter once. The letter was not long, he quickly finished reading it, just that his face suddenly looked a little gloomy, quietly said, "Sect Head." Ghost King indifferently said, "What is it?" Qing Long said, in the letter, he requested me to make a tough trip, to send this great shaman's ashes back to the southern border Miao tribe's 7-mile cave. Ghost King slowly shook his head, suddenly sighed and said, "Forget it, forget it." Qing Long was stunned. Ghost King instead turned to that Ghost King sect disciple and said, "You can leave." That person, as if granted amnesty, heavily kowtowed 3 times and hurriedly retreated. Qing Long looked at Ghost King, said, "Sect head." That ghostly, Ghost King glanced at the empty room, his eyes filled with desolation. After a long time he turned around, without calling out to Qing Long Yuji. He only walked away quietly. From his back figure, a faint low and deep voice was heard. "All heartbroken people a southern border, Fenxiang Valley." This good faction big sect which had been undergoing unforeseen events for the past few days, today there was another shocking news, instantly spread throughout the entire valley. From the depths of Fenxiang Valley, Tianxiang residence, 7 beats of the sky drum, resounding far and near, indicating that Fenxiang Valley Master Yun Ilan, who had been in seclusion for a long time, would come out today. All of the Fenxiang Valley disciples returned to their positions. No one dared to be negligent. In Fenxiang Valley Main Hall, Shan He Hall, Shangguan Su, Lu Shun and the rest of the disciples lined up in front of the hall, patiently waiting. Among the crowd, the most eye-catching was a girl standing beside Lu Shun. It was Yanhong. Ever since that night when the 9-tailed celestial fox escaped from the Inferno altar, Shangguan Su in the chaos still recognized Yanhong as an impostor, after which it was proven that it was evil sect Hehuan sect Jean Pinger in disguise, but the real Yanhong was only discovered 3 days ago in the cellar of a house in Fenxiang Valley. This was naturally that day when Jean Pinger used a strange spell to subdue Yanhong and hid her in such a place. These few days, the entire Fenxiang Valley came out in full force, searched all the big and small hills nearby, but they did not notice the house in the valley. This was because 3 days ago a male disciple, because the valley lacked a herb, went down to the cellar to search and then found Yanhong. If not, who knows how long this poor girl would have to wait in that cellar. Just that these few days of torture, Yanhong clearly looked more haggard, but right now the crowd did not have the mood to pay attention to her. All of their eyes were on the main hall side door. According to the usual practice, Yun Ilan, who was out of seclusion, would walk out from there to meet the crowd. Shangguan Su, who was standing in front of the crowd, was still dressed in black, his expression calm, just that deep in his eyes which no one could detect. His eyes indistinctly flickered with a strange glint. To him, for the past few years, this senior brother Yun Ilan, every time they met, there was always a screen between them, and when he spoke, he sounded even more weak, and in recent days he seemed to be getting older. Initially he also did not dare to believe, but recently, he gradually believed in his heart. This senior brother, who had always been above him, was really not going to make it. Unexpectedly today, Tianxiang restaurant's drum like thunder shook him to the ground. Yun Ilan was out of seclusion. Could it be that he was really in seclusion practicing spells and not trying to hide something? Shangguan Su's heart was in a mess, extremely perturbed. And behind Shangguan Su, Li Sun, who was standing in front of the younger generation disciples, could not hide the excitement in his eyes. All along, he was Yun Ilan's proudest disciple. In Fenxiang Valley, he was even more so the heaven's pride. Just that a few years ago Yun Ilan suddenly went into seclusion, without any warning, and from then on did not meet with the rest. Chapter 265. Although Li Sun was regarded specially by Yun Ilan, together with his teacher Uncle Shangguan Su were the only two in Fenxiang Valley who could have an audience with Yun Ilan, but not sure if it was because Yun Ilan felt that Li Sun was after all young and not skilled enough. Fenxiang Valley's important matters were left to Shangguan Su, and so imperceptibly, Li Sun's position dropped a lot. But now that Yun Ilan was out of seclusion, the situation naturally changed. He was the current Valley Master's most favored disciple, the next Valley Master's choice. His words naturally carried a different weight. And more importantly, just yesterday, the night before Yun Ilan came out of seclusion, he was already secretly received by Yun Ilan and knew beforehand that his teacher was coming out of seclusion. And following his teacher's exit, one of his long-awaited, long-cherished wish could finally be fulfilled. At the thought of this, Li Sun's handsome face could no longer contain his excitement. Shang Guansu's body moved, slowly turned back. That young junior nephew behind him although tried his best to maintain his composure, but that joy and excitement from the bottom of his heart was after all not something that his age and experience could cover, and even more impossible to escape Shang Guansu's eagle-like eyes that could see through the world. Heh! He slowly laughed coldly in his heart, quietly said, "Young man, the road you have to walk, I don't know how long it will be." Just when everyone was immersed in their own thoughts, suddenly melodious drum sounds, as if flying in from the heavens, circled in the great hall. Shang Guansu and the rest perked up, tidied up their attire and looked towards the side door. A red figure flashed, a figure slowly appeared, a fiery red attire. It was Funxiang Valley's past Valley Master's attire, representing this fire sect's faith. They did not feel the heat of the fire, neither did they see the dazzling light, but for some reason, with that red in front of them, all had a feeling. A ball of red fire slowly walked over. And when everyone regained their senses and saw the person in that ball of red light, including Shang Guansu who had always been calm and composed, all of them could not believe it and quietly exclaimed in bewilderment. The person who had come was a middle-aged man who looked to be in his 40s. His bright but soft red hair was not tied up and casually fell on his shoulders, giving him an air of elegance and debauchery. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. When Yun Elon went into seclusion several years ago, everyone clearly remembered that he was already an old man, and his hair had long since turned white. But now this person looked much younger than Yun Elon from back then, and his skin was bright and smooth, without a single wrinkle to be seen. Just that this person's face was clearly Yun Elon's, especially Shang Guansu. He had been with Yun Elon longer than anyone else. Even more recognized, this was clearly Yun Elon's appearance when he was young. Just that looking at that face, it was even more outstanding than when he was young. Under such shock, everyone was speechless. On the other hand, Yun Elon acted as if nothing had happened, swaggered into the main hall, in front of everyone. His eyes were bright and full of expression, looked at everyone, suddenly smiled. His voice was different from the old voice in the secret room, clear and melodious, said, "What, all of you don't recognize me as the Valley Master?" Everyone was shocked. Li Sun was the first to recover, knelt down and loudly said, "Disciple respectfully welcomes teacher out. Congratulations teacher for your great success in your seclusion training." Everyone immediately woke up and bowed. Shang Guansu's surprise slowly faded. He also lowered his head and bowed. Yun Elon clearly looked good. His mood was also very good, waved his hand and said, all right, everyone has not seen each other for a long time, stand up and speak." Everyone acknowledged and stood up. Yun Elon smiled and looked at the crowd. Finally his eyes landed on Shang Guansu, smiled and said, "Junior brother, these few years you have taken care of the valley's trifling matters, are you tired?" Shang Guansu shook his head, also revealed a smile and said, "Senior brother is not around, it is my duty as a junior brother. Instead there was an accident at Inferno Altar a few days ago." Yun Elon suddenly laughed loudly, interrupted Shang Guansu's words, said, "The matters of the past, junior brother does not have to brood over it, the future is long, we will take our time to think about it." A trace of surprise flashed past Shang Guansu's face, but he did not say anything, bowed his head and said, "Yes." Yun Elon looked at the people present and saw that their eyes were filled with respect and amazement. It was clear that his youthful-looking appearance had shocked them all. Just that he did not explain much, turned and asked Li Sun, who was already standing beside, "What happened in the valley recently?" Li Sun stepped forward, respectfully said, "This morning, Central Plains Qing Yun sect head Reverend Daoxian sent a letter, said it is a reply to teacher's letter a few days ago." As he spoke, his expression was calm, but Shang Guansu, who was standing beside, his expression changed. When Yun Elon was in seclusion, Funxiang Valley's major matters were all decided by him. The correspondence with Qin Yun's sect head was naturally an extremely important matter, but he knew nothing about it. And this reply letter had arrived this morning. Li Sun for some reason intercepted it halfway, and did not let him know. It was obvious senior brother Yun Elon purposely did not let him interfere. Shang Guansu's anger gradually grew, but his face remained the same. A strange expression flashed past. Yun Elon nodded, took the letter that Li Sun handed over, appraised it. On the letter were written neatly, Funxiang Valley Yun Elon senior brother to see personally. Signed off, Qin Yun sect Daoxian pays a visit. It was indeed Qin Yun sect Reverend Daoxian's handwritten letter. Yun Elon smiled, tore open the seal, took out a thin piece of paper and read it from start to end, his face still carrying a smile. At the end, he nodded slightly, after a moment, kept the letter in his bosom, loudly said to the crowd, "Today we will end here. All of you go back and prepare. Not long later, I will lead Funxiang Valley outstanding disciples to Central Plains to pay a visit to Qin Yun sect and Tianyin Temple friends, to discuss the world's great plans." Everyone was shocked. Funxiang Valley entering Central Plains on a large scale was already a long time ago. Unexpectedly the valley head had just come out from seclusion and gave such an important order. Just that Yun Elon's prestige had always been deep, the Funxiang Valley disciples did not think much of it. After the greetings, they all retreated and went to prepare. Only Li Sun was left behind by Yun Elon. After the crowd left, only Yun Elon and Li Sun were left in the hall. Li Sun was alone with his teacher. He was not as reserved as when everyone else was present, smiled and said, "Teacher, what kind of skill are you actually practicing in seclusion to have such a miraculous effect?" Yun Elon smiled and said, "This is the skill passed down by our Funxiang Valley founder. In the future, when your skills are enough, will you still be afraid that I will not pass it down to you?" Li Sun was surprised, saw the amiable smile in Yun Elon's eyes, as if there was a deep meaning. After thinking for a while, couldn't help but be overjoyed, quickly bowed and said, "Thank you, teacher, for your kindness. Disciple will definitely not disappoint teacher's expectations." Yun Elon smiled and helped Li Sun up, looked at him up and down, sighed and said, "Your physique is extraordinary, a great talent for cultivation. Just that I see that you are young and impetuous. Your temperament is still somewhat impetuous. You have to grasp more of yourself. In this way, with more practice, you will be able to achieve great things." Li Sun nodded his head repeatedly, said, "Thank you, teacher, for your guidance." "Oh right, teacher, you asked me to stay behind. Is there any matter?" Yun Elon glanced at him, said, "That's right, I want you to make a trip to Central Plains first." Li Sun was stunned, said, "Central Plains? To where?" Yun Elon indifferently said, "Qin Yun Hill. I will write a reply in a while. You will immediately set off and deliver this letter to Qin Yun Hill Reverend Daoxian." Li Sun nodded and said, "Yes." Yun Elon paced back and forth a few steps, said, "After Reverend Daoxian reads this letter, most likely he will ask you to stay at Qin Yun Hill for a few days. You don't have to delay, just stay at Qin Yun for a few days. I will bring the rest over later." Li Sun nodded but felt slightly puzzled, said, "Teacher, you are in such a hurry to enter Central Plains, is there any urgent matter?" Yun Elon smiled and said, "Isn't it that matter that you have been begging me for a long time?" Li Sun's body shook and then revealed an unconcealable excitement on his face, immediately knelt down again, loudly said, "Thank you, teacher, for fulfilling my wish." Yun Elon shook his head and smiled, said, all right, you go back and prepare first, come back later to collect my letter and then we will move out directly." Li Sun excitedly replied and strode out. When this young disciple's figure disappeared, the smile on Yun Elon's face also gradually turned indifferent. He turned to the south, gazed towards the direction of the 10,000 great mountains, after a long while, suddenly snorted coldly, "Since you want to come out, I will let the entire world to stop you. Want me to carry this burden alone? Heh, I am not that foolish. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.